Thank you. I'll get the admin stuff out of the way while we're waiting for other people to jump on. Good morning. This is the Saturday, January 27th meeting of the Finance Committee. Before I start all the agenda items, I'm going to tell us about the script for remotely conducted and/or hybrid open meetings. We're using Zoom, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate, blah, blah, blah. Okay, as a preliminary matter, this is Denise Cronow, Chair of the Finance Committee. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative, starting with Peter Schaefer.
Yes.
Joe Wright.
Yes.
Chris Glowacki.
Here.
Stephen Morey.
Here.
Jill Veith.
Here.
Thank you. Rob Giacchetti.
Here.
Thank you. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. I'm going to just read everyone's name I can see. Maria Basheva.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Turbot.
In attendance.
Leslie Snell.
Here.
Thank you. Michael Alvarez.
Here.
Chrissy Ferrantella.
Here.
Susan Carmel. I know you're here, Susan. I can see you. Amanda Perry.
Here.
Rick Sears.
Here.
Greg Tivnan.
Present.
Tucker Holland.
Just here in support of Christy. Thank you.
I knew that, but I wanted to give you a shout out anyway. Thank you, Tucker. Okay, good morning. This open meeting of the Finance Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. Unless participation is required by law, this meeting will feature public comment. It's by Zoom. Please note that it's being recorded. Please mute your computer when you're not speaking. And I will introduce each topic on the agenda, and then I will ask the members if they have any questions. So yeah, that's it. And each vote will be taken by roll call. So I'm calling the meeting to order. May I have an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Peter Schaefer approved.
Second.
Stephen Morey seconded. Roll call. Peter.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. I will open it for public comment. And please raise your hand if you have a public comment. And I am closing it for public comment. Thank you. Okay, now it's review and discussion of the fiscal year 2025 general fund, enterprise funds, and special revenue funds operating budgets. And with this, I will turn it over to our Director of Finance, Brian Turbot.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I don't see Libby on yet.
I don't see Libby on yet either. So it's over to you, Brian. Rock and roll.
Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna have to turn this over to either Rick or Greg to do town administration, Madam Chair, because that's what we were gonna start with.
I think, Brian, for the new folks, if you would just frame generally how this meeting goes.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
if you start with that, and then
Sure.
then we can go to the individual departments.
Okay, so Maria, could you take that down? Thank you. So typically the way this has always gone with the Finance Committee, just a reminder for all the veterans of the Saturday meetings and for the new people, town administration will present all of the budgets. The town manager and the various departments under her leadership will give an overview of their department budgets, going through their goals and their initiatives, mainly in the stories. Typically, the way that we have done it is the departments will discuss any requested new positions that were recommended, any exceptions that are an increase of $10,000 or more. And departments will give a brief overview of the capital that was presented to the Capital Program Committee, whose report was final and I think is going to be being presented to the Select Board on Wednesday night. So with that, I think Libby is here, so we can start with the town administration budget, I think, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Good morning, Libby.
Good morning. Okay, so my little list said starting at 8:15, but let me launch in.
Well, we got through the preliminaries quickly. Look at that. We're already ahead of
Apparently,
schedule.
yeah. Okay, everybody ready to go. All right. So I was just setting up my whole thing here, so it's a little not totally set up.
That's okay. Take your time.
Okay, so, to start out with, one of the most important, if not the most important municipal responsibilities is the annual operating budget, as you know. Town administration is charged by charter with preparing a proposed budget for the select board. We presented that budget to the board on December 13th and to the finance committee on January 11th. This section will drill down by department into the specifics of what is requested for fiscal 25. All of that information is laid out in the budget message, which is posted online. I would like to point out that this year, due to some staffing modifications, our budget process was maybe not quite as seamless as it might normally have been. However, I am really grateful for the time spent by Assistant Finance Director Sue Carmel. She did a great job filling in. Greg Tivnan, Rick Sears, and Brian. Maria, bless her heart, did what she could when she could, and we muddled through the whole thing. And of course, the support of the departments is much appreciated. So going to town admin, in addition to what's shown in the budget story on your screen there, town administration staffing consists of the town manager, 2 assistant town managers, 1 for administration and 1 for strategic and special projects, our operations administrator, the executive assistant to the town manager, public records access officer, and special projects manager. We have 3 divisions: communications, staffed by communications manager, public outreach coordinator. We have a division of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, staffed by a director. And our real estate division is staffed by a real estate specialist, which is currently unfilled. We're trying to fill that position now. We are located at 16 Broad Street in the town building and at 3 East Chestnut Street. Most of our staff is in person, some are remote. Goals. We have 6 goals. Most relate to the select board strategic plan and some overlap with each other. I'm not going to review every one of them, but I would like to focus on goals 2, 4, and 6. Goal 2, seasonal and year-round town employee housing is a high priority goal of the board and town administration. We have a number of initiatives underway to address this goal, which we'll get to in a second when we get to initiatives. Goal 4, in September, we gave the board a collision project presentation. That's our nickname for very large capital projects on our horizon that are going to be costly. FinCom was invited to attend that. I think some of you did or viewed the presentation later. One of the takeaways is the need for project management resources to execute current and pending projects. Goal 6. I'm sure the committee is aware of the goal to deliver a smooth transition from the current waste services agreement for the solid waste operation to a new one when the current contract expires near the end of 2025. I've established a work group to assist with this, consisting of myself, Assistant Town Manager Rick Sears, Solid Waste Manager Chris Lowe, DPW Director Drew Patnode, Finance Director Brian Turbot, Select Board Member Brooke Moore, Finance Committee Member Peter Schaefer, Capital Program Committee Member Howard Matz, Town Council John Giorgio, and our Solid Waste Consultant George Aronson. We are also frequently joined by Recycling Coordinator Elise Kellogg, Energy Coordinator Lauren Sinatra, and Special Projects Manager Chuck Larson. So our initiatives tracked by the goals. So again, I'm going to focus on 2, 4, and 6. Initiative 2. We have reorganized our housing and real estate functions so that housing is its own department and real estate is a division of town administration. We are working to develop an effective structure with associated plans to address the multifaceted aspects of managing employee housing. These include housing that the town owns and rents to employees, housing that the town is renting from others and renting to employees, maintaining all of that housing, including dealing with issues that routinely and or unexpectedly arise, rent collection and rent setting, ensuring that the housing is being occupied by the appropriate individuals. For housing that is rented, attending to homeowners association or other requirements as needed for that particular housing, maintaining a list of employees who need housing, seeking, following up on, monitoring potential housing opportunities, and procuring housing. We also are working to maintain an inventory of each housing property, including what its program is. For example, is it specific for certain employees? How are the utilities handled? Who mows the lawn? What are the particulars of the property? Does it have Wi-Fi? Additional resources are needed for all of this. We are in the process of filling a position funded for the current fiscal year, rental property manager, who will report to the housing director. Our projects initiative, initiative 4. While there is something of a standard model industry-wide to manage large projects. Every project has its own needs, and each needs its own funding, procurement, permitting, sequencing, stakeholder involvement, and public outreach. We are in the process of hiring a project manager, a position funded for fiscal '24, which is intended to help monitor, track, and provide assistance with project management and to help make sure the appropriate staff are informed and have input into projects that may impact their operations. The DPW is also in the process of developing an engineering project manager type of position. We simply do not have the bandwidth to manage multiple large projects concurrently. Initiative 6, relating to solid waste activities. As hopefully you all learned from the Select Board's January 11th Comprehensive Solid Waste Overview meeting, we have some very specific tasks we are undertaking, which include acquisition of the transfer station and the composter, and developing and issuing an RFP this spring for an operator or operators to manage the town's solid waste operation. These activities are well underway, and the acquisitions will require a town meeting vote at the May annual town meeting. Current year accomplishments. We are accomplishing quite a lot, and so much is happening across the board. Some of our accomplishments I've touched on. We are very pleased to have been able to successfully fill the department head positions of police chief, DPW director, chief technology officer, housing director, and solid waste manager. Filling these positions is time intensive, and thankfully, our human resources team is amazing. They make it look easy, but it's far from easy. Obviously, our location also creates certain challenges that we have to overcome. We've completed collective bargaining for all of our unions, as well as a classification and compensation study for non-union employees, which resulted in market and cost of living adjustments. This was a substantial investment. However, our employees are what makes the town function, and given Nantucket's cost of living and housing challenges, we need to be competitive. We have also spent a lot of time exploring ways to recruit and retain employees more effectively, including the establishment of leadership and morale groups, strengthening training and professional development opportunities, and employee wellness. Our communications division is working very hard to develop the town's public outreach and community engagement. We have many irons in the fire, so to speak, with communications, including multilingual outreach, timely postings on social media, e-newsletters, explanatory videos, analysis of data gathered through social media platforms, and our on-demand Government 101 video series. Key issues. Key issues are covered by what's shown here. In a nutshell, I would say our biggest issue is managing the multitude of issues and competing priorities with limited resources, both staffing and space. We have many projects pending and several very large projects on the horizon. The long-term goal is a central municipal complex. This would allow for much more effective and efficient interaction of staff who are based in one central facility rather than at least half a dozen remote offices, which also would reduce maintenance and repair costs and free up some spaces for other uses, including coastal resiliency concerns. Another growing issue is our workforce. We are looking at remote and/or hybrid workers more seriously than ever. Our workforce is becoming more challenging to handle with emerging issues, including these different approaches to where someone works. Each approach requires a different policy, different considerations as to communications, travel, training, housing, work rules. I wanted to touch a tad on civility. Civil behavior has become a topic, probably worldwide. And while we are seeing an increase in municipal webinars and discussions at municipal managers meetings and things like that on how to handle incivility, municipal employees are often targets. And that is another reason why hiring is difficult. We can all disagree without being disagreeable. Okay, expense increase requests. We have two that are not quite exactly funded yet, and we are grappling with whether or not we can fund them for fiscal '25. The paralegal and the town committee coordinator. We do believe the paralegal could help reduce our legal expenses, but at this point, we are still in the process of filling the real estate specialist position. So that may be something that we just end up putting on hold and reconsider for fiscal '26. In fact, that's probably what we're going to do. We actually had a funded position to take on committee coordination, including open meeting law and conflict of interest compliance several years ago. However, that position has had to take on the processing of public records requests, which consumes most of that position's time. Hopefully before town meeting, we will come up with a way to fund this additional position, but that remains to be seen. The Select Board Strategic Plan. This item would increase professional services in connection with the Select Board Strategic Plan from $50,000 to $100,000. Periodically throughout the year, the board asks for initiatives, studies, or reports to be undertaken in connection with the strategic plan, and we need to be able to address those. Equipment. we are intending to establish an ongoing equipment line with this EIR. So for fiscal 25, so this would be just a standing equipment line item of $10,000 for replacement or new equipment. In fiscal 25, we're scheduled to purchase a replacement drone for the communications division. An EV replacement vehicle. This would replace a 2012 hybrid vehicle used by town administration staff and remote employees when on island. Costs will hopefully be offset by a grant, and I believe we have received a grant of, I think, about $7,500. We got notification of this week. Grant application support. These would be funds available through town administration for departments to utilize for grant opportunities to engage firms that specialize and have expertise in the particular grant area. We believe this is more effective than hiring a position due to the growing specificity of grants and grant requirements. One individual is unlikely to have the expertise and breadth of knowledge needed to successfully secure a grant. Our project management software and support, I'm going to turn that over to Greg. He is the one who's been sort of spearheading this item.
Good morning. Thank you, Libby. Good morning, Madam Chair. As you all know, in about 2019, town administration created the beginnings of a project management office to help support the strategic objectives of the strategic plan. Obviously, some bumps in the road, COVID got delayed. As you start developing this division of town administration that includes me and Chuck Larson, the manager of strategic projects, we realized that we have no proper central database for the multitude of projects that are occurring across the town. An example of this that may impact each other is the water main project west of the airport that has been developed through our PFAS planning efforts, which at the same time has had a roadway project and bike path project on the exact same roads, but we weren't coordinating with each other. We realized we need a central database to be able to manage these large projects and small projects, to also identify resource allocations. And we are hoping to be able to expand upon an existing contract. We have a quote for the $175,000 to be able to implement a successful project management database with tech support.
Great. Thank you, Greg. Okay, moving into capital. The townwide document management system. This would be phase 3 of a multi-phase project to digitize public records to make them available online in a searchable database. This funding would start the PLUS records. Already completed are sewer, health, and natural resources. Coastal resiliency planning. We have been funding $1 million for each of the last 3 fiscal years, including this fiscal year. The Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee requested additional funds for fiscal 25. These funds are used to further projects as prioritized in the Coastal Resiliency Plan. Ground mapping radar. So in order to determine how best to preserve and repair and preserve sidewalks in the downtown historic area, we need to understand what is under them, including tree roots, unmapped pipes, and utility wiring or cables. Good example, Upper Main across from Pleasant Street has, if you've noticed, granite slabs that are all over the place, probably because of, clearly because of tree roots, but how best to deal with that? We need to know how deep these roots go and all manner of other things. And this will help guide our downtown sidewalk restorations projects planning. Town employee housing. These funds are for unspecified town properties, although we do have a preliminary inventory of potential sites for employee housing, so that we can secure professional services to help determine what could be feasible at a variety of locations, including type and style of housing, permitting, design, sequencing, employee needs, both current and future, in order to develop a workable plan that can be managed and prioritized. We need some flexibility to be able to undertake this planning effort, and sometimes we need to act quickly. I was just going to ask Rick if you wanted to add anything to that, because he's been involved in this.
You said it better than I thought I was going to say it. No, I think while it's unspecified, we do have a target property along Tacoma Way where we have 8 lots, and we have sort of a conceptual design, very preliminary, but we still need to figure out how to how to build it in the sense of single family homes versus duplexes, and that's why we continue to need the flexibility to around this capital request.
I think that's it.
Thank you, Libby. Now questions from the committee. Just raise, because as everyone knows, the general fund is for all of us, not just one person. So, Rob, please.
I was just curious about the 175K for project management software. Is that a subscription? Is that an annual recurring charge or a one-time, or what's the?
Greg, can
Madam
you-
Chair, I can respond if you like.
Please, go ahead, Greg.
Thank you. Well, the $175,000 is for the initial investment, licensing, and a dedicated tech support. We hope for up to 1 year. After that, it would be a subscription service.
That run ongoingly?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah.
What will the annual cost be after that?
It depends on the amount of licenses, but right now we have it calculated for just 4 licenses, which would be under 50,000.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter Schaefer?
Morning, everybody. Libby, how many open positions do we have right now in the town?
I'm gonna go to Amanda on that one, HR director.
There's roughly 60 positions that we're tracking in recruitment. So they're in various stages of recruitment, either vacant or an internal transfer or things like that. So roughly 60 positions.
And when you guys calculate payroll amongst the departments, do you allocate, how much you allocate for the open positions? 100%, 50%?
Brian?
We've allocated 100% with the expectation that we will fill them by July 1st. And
Okay, thanks.
Jill?
Hi, so how many, I heard Libby say that she was looking at doing more remote workforce. And how many people do you have working remotely now or employed?
I don't know if I know that answer off the top of my head. I'm gonna say at least half a dozen.
Yeah, And so
Amanda-
you're really open to having more people work remotely?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on what they're doing, obviously. But, you know, we've attended a lot of municipal workforce changing types of meetings and workshops and discussions. And a lot of people don't want to work in an office.
Mhm.
They want to work remote or be hybrid. And that is actually, in some cases, it's works fine, maybe even a little better. Sometimes if you know, can, I think we all kind of wonder, like, is the remote person really working? But, and how would you really know that? But in our situation, I think we're finding that it's working out okay. And there are just some other things that we have to take into consideration for more remote workers. For example, if they work in another state, there are potential liabilities from that state. If
Mhm.
they have, you know, employee rules, regulations, laws, things like that, we may have to comply with those. But yeah, I think we're looking at it more and more.
I think it sounds really interesting, to be honest. It might, I liked hearing that. I mean, I know it's not ideal. I understand that, but
But it could be.
I know you need
the
more
way
employees.
Yeah, could be the way we're going.
I had a few more questions, if that's okay, Denise. Or you
Go
want to
ahead, Jill. And then Jeremy, I'll come to you next. Go ahead, Jill.
Yeah. Do we know, and maybe Brian's going to get to this, how much has been spent on the public records requests that have come in from the public?
Well, I don't know how much spent. I'm not really sure what you mean. We have a position.
Well, I know you have an
that handles it.
employee that handles them, but then the time of that, like what percentage of her time, does town council have to weigh in on some of the responses? You have to, like, is there a way to make a guess about how much time you all spend on that? Because it sounds like a lot.
It's a lot. I would look to Brian or somebody else in town admin to answer, but I'm gonna say sometimes I have to look at records. We don't track how much time other people have to spend, I don't really think. But needless to say, this one person spends almost her entire time on it.
Right. And does town council, do we spend money on town council helping with the responses?
Occasionally there is the need for town council to weigh in, but that is primarily covered by the retainer.
Right. But still, we're spending a lot of money on that. And so they don't, and they're not allowed to charge a fee. I thought they did have to get charged a fee for copies or something like that. if they're-
There's a way to charge a fee, but it again takes time to calculate the fee. And it depends on the volume of the request. If it's, hundreds and hundreds of documents, then we are going to calculate it. If it's not, then it's not worth it.
Right. Okay, town employee housing. Can you quickly, and forgive me, explain to me what's been done? I know that the dorm money went at special town meeting. Now we're looking at doing another project on Waite Drive. Is that it? And then I know on the warrant, you have Western Avenue on there. And then I think you bought something else maybe on Bacchus. Do you think you or somebody can quickly just refresh all of us, because it's different than what's coming out of the 6.5 million? And I already saw some traffic on social media, people complaining about their taxes going up. So I just wanted to.
Well,
appreciate.
so Christie and or Tucker can speak to what the Affordable Housing Trust is doing, and I think they're
Yeah.
going to cover that in their segment. So for town administration, we are working on a seasonal dorm project on Waite Drive. I don't know of another project on Waite Drive other than the Habitat project. And the idea is that would cover seasonal employees, including lifeguards, perhaps public works employees, and it would free up, once built, sites that are currently used for lifeguard housing. For example, there's a lifeguard house on Orkawa. So we could then repurpose that property for year-round employee housing, which is part of what we'd be doing with the $3 million. There would also be potential space in this dorm building for year-round housing as potentially needed. Possibly in the winter, consultants could stay there. Possibly in the winter, we could make some revenue by renting it to nonprofits who have people here for the winter doing things. Western Ave is another option for seasonal housing, definitely. And that would free up even more space at Waite Drive, maybe, for additional year-round possibilities.
Gotcha.
We have.
So things will really
I mean-
shift gears based on that vote in May on
Yeah,
Western.
it's a really dynamic situation, to be honest. I mean, Western Ave is a lot of money. And it's the purchase price, but we don't want to, not acknowledge this, but there's going to be a substantial investment to bring that property up to code and maintain it, because it is burdened with a historic preservation restriction. However, there is the possibility of additional year-round units there as well. So it could be a good investment for the town. But we want to make sure people understand it is definitely going to be costly. I don't know what else you want to know about the housing, Jill. The board, the town is currently renting and or has purchased employee housing kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Libby, we did just purchase, we recently purchased 19B First Way. The town did itself, not the Affordable Housing Trust.
I think you're right.
So I think that might be the purchase that you're referring to, Jill.
And that went through the Affordable Housing Trust, is that what you're saying? No,
No, that was through the town.
that's what I'm saying
town
is
bought
I
that.
think there could be some confusion for people to understand. There's a separation here of these funding streams between town employee housing and the Affordable Housing Trust. And I think that's going to be important at town meeting personally, if you all want this stuff to pass, to explain that their tax dollars are coming from different sources.
Thank you, Jill. That's very good input. We also are planning a housing update at the board's meeting on February 7th, I believe. And I think we're definitely aware that I mean, like I said, the housing whole situation is very dynamic and it isn't all that straightforward to easily explain to people. But we need to obviously figure out a way to kind of bring it to a basic level. So. thank
Well,
you
and
for-
I think also it's confusing to people. They don't know who's gonna go in that, who is a town employee versus who can apply for the affordable housing and can they apply for both? I mean, that's just something that people will start talking about and we wanna, make sure that people don't think that, everything we're doing is on that issue to the point where they're feeling left out, I guess is kind of what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
The town employee housing is teachers as well, I believe, and
Mhm.
it's, you have your priorities, I understand that, but it's a large pool of people.
It is. Yep.
Okay, I think I have one more question. Sorry.
Okay.
Lucky for you, I'm having to leave early. I'm in a paddle tournament today, so sorry.
Okay.
The collision projects that you so aptly named. Maybe Brian wants to walk us through. A lot of these projects are not approved,
Right.
right? So we don't really know that we're gonna get to 800 million in these projects, right? I mean,
Correct, but they
mean-
are proposed. They're in the
Yeah.
capital plan.
no, I know. I'm just saying it would be also good to kind of understand that a little bit more because how you're gonna stagger those votes on the warrant. I know you have the one graph, Brian, and I didn't know if that had been updated or if it had changed. It showed kind of what was already out there, what was proposed for next year. Like you have the senior center on for 2025, I think. And I was going to ask about the senior center. Is there going to be any private money raised for that as well?
I don't think we've gotten there yet.
Okay. And then, and so I just was wondering like what year you think that the dump is gonna come up. Is it definitely next year? I know you have your work group on it. So I think Brian had the one chart and I thought maybe it had changed a little bit. Your
I don't
purple
think-
lavender chart that you have, I'm in design, I think in terms of color.
I'm not sure that it's changed dramatically because it was put together as we were doing the capital program process. So, and you're right. We don't know for certain that all $880 million in the capital plan is going to come to fruition. It may change. Things may be pushed out depending on priorities that may arise that require us to alter it.
Okay.
I don't think it's changed dramatically at this point, Jill. I think we're still fairly confident that those years are where we think, or we've anticipated those projects would be potentially put through the process, starting with, the presentation initially to the select board, review by town administration and capital program committee. So it was our best effort to try to really let everybody from FinCom, capital program to select board and the voters in the town know that there's an extremely large amount of projects that are going to not only require a large amount of capital investment, but a large amount of time as well. And just get everybody to start to understand that we have a lot to do and we don't have necessarily all of the people to be able to manage every one of those simultaneously. So I think that was what it was really about and give people kind of a projection where we think they were going to be, but that will be updated as we go through the process on a yearly basis from now on as well.
Yeah, I mean, just like the town employee housing stuff keeps changing all the time. I understand that. That's very dynamic as well. Okay, and then my last question, if it's okay, Denise,
Go ahead, Jill.
is on, Brian, do you work with the assessor about the land that is taxable here and the land that is not taxable here? I know I like to ask you this question every year, but yesterday's a good example. The Wisconsin
sure.
market was sold, and so that land, 5.2 million, is now going to be not taxed because it was sold to the Wisconsin Trust. So I'm trying to understand, do you make projections on that, or not projections? Because I know the sales, you don't know who's going to buy it. I get that. But do you see what land has not come, what land is going off, what land is coming on?
So I think that I wouldn't suggest, or I think that there's not a lot of land coming back on the tax rolls. I mean, that would mean that something came out of the hands of a nonprofit or an entity that wasn't paying taxes on the land currently at the time of a transaction. I think you would see more coming off the tax rolls as various organizations acquire property. The assessor does have a list. Do we look at every property and trying to figure out if it comes off, what might come off on an annual basis? We don't really do that. We could put together the list of all the exempt properties. I think kind of what you may be going to is that some communities across the Commonwealth have instituted pilots with some of the organizations that have exempt properties that are not paying taxes on it as kind of a way to pilot as a payment in lieu of taxes. Because the common theory is that they do utilize some of the services in the town. But on an annual basis, I mean, he'll look at it and we have a general sense of the value that's coming off, but we don't analyze that dramatically every year, no.
I just think it would be good to see like people to understand what doesn't get taxed, because I think people probably think that's just land and conservation, and it's not, although that is significant. Significant.
That's
It's
the majority of it.
50% of the
We'll-
island. And I
We'll
think
send the FinCom a list of all the exempt properties and the valuation and what that impact might look like. We can do that. He's prepared it before, so it should be right at his fingertips.
okay, that's great, because I think it's something like 64% of the island is not taxed, and I hope I'm wrong. We got to keep you funded for your collision projects, Brian.
Hey,
Thank
Jill,
you.
can I move on to
Thank
Jeremy?
you, Jill.
Okay. Jeremy, go ahead.
Thank you, Denise. Libby and Brian, I had a question surrounding the concept of outsourcing management as a service. And you mentioned grants that you're now moving towards using third-party consulting firms or others. And I just wondered to find grants as opposed to only using an in-house person because of the difficulty of finding folks. Do you have a sense of the order of magnitude of grants that are available from many sources, what that absolute sort of scope might be, and maybe also how many different kind of buckets that would be? In other words, there's 50 million bucks available a year, for example, and it's in half a dozen different types of buckets, and there are so many firms out there that can help us sort that. Do we have a sense of that?
I would ask Greg to supplement this, but I'm going to say I think we have a general sense of it. Yes, we get a lot of email from state agencies and other groups that are offering grants. The grants are becoming, they're specific, and there are often a lot of requirements to apply, some of which we don't meet. But yeah, I think we have a general sense out there, and our consultants certainly have a general sense out there. So there's a lot of avenues where grant opportunities are brought to us. Greg, do you want to add to that?
What might be an order of magnitude of your sense of what is available? And then again, how many different groups will we need in order to access that?
I'm not quite sure how to answer the order of magnitude question, but I think our staff, specifically in sustainability and coastal resiliency and energy, are very well aware of what's out there, and our legislators will often also tell us what's out there. I think Greg, do you want to maybe give the example of the Easy Street project?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure the order of magnitude either, but an example is recently, within the past couple of months, the state announcing a pass-through grant from the federal government for resiliency projects that would and gave a list of what would be approved or what is appropriate. And our downtown flood barrier project, which was approved through the CRP process, fit that mold. And we had 4 weeks to turn it around, and it was a very dense application with everything that ranged from sea level data to engineering stats. And we hired a firm in order to help write the grant, and we were successful in getting the grant with that quick turnaround. But we in-house, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we don't need somebody on staff. We would never have somebody on staff with that expertise, because that person wouldn't be able to go and write a fire department grant. But having that ability, having the funding available, which we did, we were able to, be nimble enough to shift gears, focus on applying for that grant. And internally, I think there were 7 of us on the review team that are all needed to contribute to the grant application. So it's that type of effort that this funding would support.
So, okay, so just getting back to my question on orders of magnitude. I think not just to answer my question today, but I'm aware of other committees in town government that are kind of looking at this capability and understanding the speed at which we can access grants so we don't lose them. It would be nice to know that between state and federal and other, that there is, we believe, X millions of dollars available annually, albeit very specifically. And they fall into 3, 4, 6, 9 different major buckets. And we anticipate using different service providers because it doesn't warrant having internal capability. It would be nice to know that so we can scope it. And I believe that not just for the finance committee, but I think there are a number of other committees that would like to see that information as well. And this gets back to, as the world is changing, and for instance, with project managers for the collision committee, likewise, just an understanding of what kind of capability and where could we find that capability to manage such projects if we can't attract internal people because it doesn't make sense or we can't find them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anything else?
No, that's it. That was my question.
Thank you. Brian, how much revenue came in from grants last year? Do you know that number off the top of your head? It was a couple
No,
million.
that number off the top of my head, it's a few million.
Yeah, it's at least a couple million, right?
The ones that we qualified for,
Yeah.
I don't have a Reading list of the ones that we were denied what the amount was.
Oh, no, I don't care about that.
But I think, I don't think we can give you a specific number, Jeremy, but I'm sure that it's in the many tens of millions of dollars with the investment especially with the Federal Infrastructure Act and things of that nature, and the Fed starting to make or the state starting to focus on resiliency and sustainability. And there's a lot of IT infrastructure grants that are just been announced by the state. So there's, without having an exact number, it's tens of millions of dollars of grants that along the way we might be eligible for some portion of those. So I think that, and we, like the town manager and Greg had said too, most of the stakeholders at the state level or the federal level send us the information pretty regularly on those for us to look at to see whether we would fit the requirements or not. And they do come with pretty short deadlines and pretty dense applications. And so I do think that this would be a benefit to be able to leverage some of that for all the stakeholders in the town, not just, some of the specific ones that we've mentioned.
Thank you. Brooke?
So the only thing that I would add here that might help Jeremy is while I was with some of our legislators over the weekend at MMA and Senator Markey said there's millions and millions of dollars for coastal resiliency. The issue is that they're highly competitive. So while they may announce billions of dollars of grants, many communities are applying for it. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's really hard to predict like what the dollar value is, because we can make a number of applications that don't get awarded a nickel, but we have to try. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Brooke. Joe?
Is this an appropriate time for me to ask a question about Our Island Home?
When we get to Our Island Home.
Okay.
So, thank you, Joe. Jeremy, your hand's still up. Do you have more questions?
No, I just didn't take it down yet.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you. Any other questions in respect of town administration? Because otherwise we will move on to each department within the general fund. No other questions? Okay, so first up is the Housing Department. Christy, please. If you're speaking, we
How
can't
is
hear you. Oh,
everybody?
now we can hear you. Okay, thanks, Christy.
Of course. Thank you for pulling that up. So I'm gonna kind of go over some of the goals and initiatives for the FY25. First, I just wanted to say hi to everybody. Christy Farenthold, the new housing director for the town of Nantucket. I also have Tucker on just as support in case any questions come up on historical information. So 3 goals that we're focusing on this year. Over the last several years, town meeting has awarded funds for the Affordable Housing Trust to grow and acquire land. And so one of the goals is to develop the properties that the trust has acquired over the past several years. There's currently an RFP out for 135, 137 Orange Street. And we're working to develop RFPs for other properties such as 7 Amelia and White Street. A second goal is uninterrupted period of safe harbor. We were approved for 2 years of safe harbor in December of 2022. So our current period is going to expire December 11th of this year. So the trust and the town are working to make sure that there's a project. We either need to create 31 units for 1 year of safe harbor or 62 units for 2 years of safe harbor. And we just want to make sure that there's a project in the pipeline that meets that deadline. Everybody listened to the select board meeting a few weeks ago. Kind of our plan A is Tacoma Green, which is at 6 fairgrounds, and that has 64 units. They're still working out some critical issues. And so we always want to have an additional plan backup. And so that's where we have the RFP for 135 and 137 Orange Street. And the third goal is the passage of a local option real estate transfer fee. The Governor Healy's administration submitted an act, the Affordable Homes Act, this past October, which included a local option for a real estate transfer fee. And this was kind of monumental that it's being proposed in the governor's bill and really gaining traction. They just had the first hearing last week up in Boston to review this. And with the, I think, 11.5 hours of testimony, there was more in support than not in support. So this would be a critical funding source for the town in terms of housing if that is put through this year. I think I covered all of the initiatives that are working on that. Current year accomplishments, as I mentioned, Governor Healy has included the local option for the real estate transfer fee. The development of 22 rental units at 31 Fairgrounds Road is slated for completion in Q2 of 2024. I touched on the RFP that has been issued, and we have hired myself as the new housing director. We're also in the works of hiring a rental property manager, which relates to Olivia was talking about, of trying to manage the units that we own and rent for employee use. And we don't have any additional positions or unusual expenses this year.
Questions for Christy? Thank you, Christy. Questions for Stephen?
Hi, Christy. Good morning. Can you update us on the 31 Fairgrounds Road project? What was the original estimated completion date, the original estimated project cost, and then where we are today?
Turn that over to Tucker for a little bit more of historical.
So the board might recall this project commenced, really concurrent with the onset of the pandemic. So the original completion date was earlier. There have been some delays, largely related to the pandemic, but also just some of the challenges of working on Nantucket. So I'd have to look back, Stephen, to give you an exact answer on when the original forecast was, but it was I believe sometime last year was the original forecast. So there have been delays associated with that project. There have been several cost adjustments to the project. The project's changed in scope from the initial proposal. Again, the pandemic changed the cost with the rising construction costs fairly dramatically, and that's not unique to this project. I think the board may be familiar that with right across the street, the Six Fairgrounds project, when that originally came forward, that was anticipated to be a $25 million project. The developer just updated the select board last week and noted it's now over 50 million. So that project, I believe, is slated to be completed. I think we've approved approximately 13 million, towards the construction of that project, but I'm going to have to, I can get you more precise numbers.
Okay, I would appreciate more precise numbers from somebody. I think we're talking about significant delays, and I don't think they can all be explained by COVID at this point. So cost and, this is sort of a new structure, right? We partnered with a private entity. So what worked well, what didn't work well, what informs how we're going to work in the future?
It's a great question. Yes, and I think you make a good point there. We believed that it's important to develop the development capacity of, let's say, particularly local nonprofit organizations involved in housing that are in alignment with addressing the housing goals that the town and the community have identified. And so this was and is an investment in trying to help Housing Nantucket build its capacity as a nonprofit developer. So, unquestionably, there are learnings. The project is really, managed by Housing Nantucket. The trust recognized this was a step up for them in what they do, and so provided funding for a project management consultant, Steve Hollister, who's been very good, but there are some learnings for how we might do things in the future, and I think in the end we're going to have a project that we all are going to be proud of. And I think if you look at even with the cost adjustments that have occurred, it's still on a per unit basis, looking at now what is going to be the cost right across the street at Six Fairgrounds for a project that is basically 3 times the size. It's still going to be less on a per unit basis than this, call it, comparable project. So I think—
What is that unit cost?
So again, I want to go back, Stephen, and get you, the precise numbers, but we're looking at roughly 590 Six Fairgrounds, and we're pushing over 700 at Six Fairgrounds.
Tucker, I think you meant 590 31 Fairgrounds, and
I'm sorry. Yes, I apologize, Madam Chair.
No, just checking.
So, Madam Chair, to Stephen, the construction costs that have been approved or agreed to be funded right now total 13.1 million to date. And there was 3.6 million, I believe, was the acquisition cost, which was a grant for the land.
Yeah.
So total cost right now for the project are about $16.8 million.
Okay, so that brings the per unit cost to 763,000.
Well, that's including the land.
Right.
Yeah, so on an kind of an apples to apples.
That's the cost of it, right? I mean, we gifted the land, or we're giving a $1 per year lease to the people across the street, but there's a cost.
Right.
associated with land.
Yeah.
So does the housing office or does the housing trust have any benchmarks for what they think? I mean, this is more expensive, for instance, than what Habitat for Humanity pays to produce their units. So, you know, how do we do better, or can we do better? Are we hamstrung? How do we keep on? If the town must pay more because of regulations or what have you, how do we keep to timelines so that we can avoid some of the cost escalation issues?
Well, just one note there. So the trust recently received a request from Habitat for their next project, you know, and that's coming in at roughly 670 a unit. Again, not including the land. So it's, you know, if you're talking about 31 Fairgrounds, it's not out of line.
The size of the units aren't comparable.
The size of the units are different, correct?
So you're talking about single family homes. I mean, I think there's 1 duplex and 4 freestanding cottages, which is significantly different than 22.
Correct.
So that's not apples to apples. And I guess, you know, what concerns me is that we don't have benchmarks and we don't know specifically what went wrong or how to fix it if an opportunity like Wiggles Way presents itself in the future. I mean, this project, I believe, was permitted after COVID, and we're, you know, 3 years since we had building permits, roughly. Maybe that's too long. Maybe it's 2.5. And we don't have people living there, and we don't know, you know, exactly how to improve the process. So it's not, I don't want to belabor an audit on Wiggles Way, except that a post-mortem, I think, would be helpful and instructive going forward.
Completely agree.
I agree. And just to add a little bit, we have had a internal construction committee between Housing Nantucket, Steve Hollister, the developer, and a member from the trust, just so that we can have, you know, bi-weekly meetings and continue to check in on this process. And I think that's something that, like, we're learning as we're going as to what we would have to put in place as a structure in future developments and deals.
I think one of the things to build on what Stephen's talking about, one of the things that concerns me is we start a project and it starts at 10 million, and then all of a sudden there's 3.5 million, 30% in incremental cost. We have no choice but to spend the money because you're not going to leave something unfinished. And yet, if it was your own personal house building, I realize it's more complex in your own personal house, but if it was, people would say, I had colleagues that would say, they're going to sit on the cash box a little tighter than you do, because it's just like, oh, well, that's what it's come up to be. So the lessons learned that Stephen is talking about are essential for controlling when you start on Orange Street, because that's a bigger property, I believe, and it could end up being much more expensive with bigger overruns. And I know that's no one's goal, obviously. So, Stephen, anything else before I go to Jeremy?
Yeah, and thank you, Denise. Can you, Tucker, describe what was the unique and I think it was novel for Nantucket? What was the arrangement that we had between the trust and Housing Nantucket and the private developer. What were how was that orchestrated?
So I believe that the builder developer had secured this property and had made his intentions known that he planned to develop 22 units there roughly of rental stock. And so I think the trust has generally had a view that when some of these projects that are coming forward are, where there's some level of scale, certainly by Nantucket standards involved, that, if there's an opportunity to have them exclusively serve the year-round community versus potentially being, for shorter term rent or what have you, we generally want to take a look and see if there's a role for us to play to make that year-round outcome happen. And so at the developer was, amenable to trying to go down that path. And we reached out to Housing Nantucket, as mentioned before, to say, here's an opportunity for you all to perhaps increase your development capacity. I think as you probably know, Stephen, historically, Housing Nantucket had been obviously monitoring and managing the Covenant program, and then sort of on a 1 or 2 unit a year basis, adding stock to their rental program, typically through the donation of like a small home or cottage that otherwise would have been torn down. So, if we're only developing 1 or 2 rental units a year, we're never going to get where we need to be. And so we wanted to be of support to them to expand their capacity and serve the community.
I think what I'm going to ask at this point, because I'm doing a time check, it's 3 minutes after 9 and we still have 9 or 10 to 9 departments to go through. Christy, I would like to ask to put you on the agenda at a future FinCom meeting to kind of walk through some of the concerns about what are you doing in terms of controlling, how do you audit how all this is happening, from the, looking at it from a fiscal responsibility side, and then having a session with the Finance Committee because it's will always be a large number in the budget of so Libby, through you, if that's okay, we have Christy come to Finance Committee at some point like Tucker used to, and kind of give us an update and maybe do a deeper dive into all these topics, because I think they're very important. Is that okay?
Sure.
Add that to an agenda item. So Maria, remind me and we'll find a time. Jeremy, a question, and then I'm going to ask us to move on to the remaining departments so we don't run out of time for the department heads that are patiently waiting.
Thank you, Denise. Maybe just when we have that future meeting, Christy, what I heard, I think from Tucker, was that there was an amorphous increase in expenses so as to develop local nonprofit development capability. And I would like to understand if you could, or in a future meeting, if maybe you could quantify what that might be, number one. And number two, how do we provide some operating leverage on that, i.e. take benefit from that in the future? So to let Denise is correct so we can move on, maybe you could just think about that a little bit, and in a future meeting we could discuss that, because that capability, while important, may also lead to a lot of expense.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, Christy, Tucker, thank you very much. Nice to see you again, Tucker, and Christy, welcome to your new job. We look forward to working with you. Okay, Brian, you're up. Brian, you're muted. You're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry about that.
That's right.
Keep forgetting the mute button even after 3 years of doing Zoom, right?
I know.
So the department goals for the finance department really remain the same on an every year basis. It's really the primary goal and the mission for us is to provide the accounting services that will generate reliable financial statements that can be distributed to outside agencies, bond rating agencies, agencies of that nature, as well as internally to the select board, to the finance committee, to all the boards that rely on the financial statements or the financial ability of the town to do and operate and provide the services so that we can use those to drive and informed in making informed management decision-making processes for the budget and other initiatives, capital included. The other goal really is for the budget is, as everyone knows, we're using the OpenGov platform. We're really working internally to continue to roll out some of the OpenGov platforms and modules and with the intention of being able to provide the citizens a more transparent process, and not only the budget process, but the overall fiscal year process. So in the future, we will be rolling out a few more modules that the public will be able to access as we work with OpenGov. And then the last one for us in turn really is related to capital. As some of you may be aware, we took on the initiative of developing our own capital CIP software. We partnered with a development company, a software coders, and we've continuously worked to upgrade and enhance that process through the software is called Plum. It's been pretty robust. The capital program committee has been very integral in helping develop it, but the goal is to continue to enhance that so that we can provide better data and understanding the impacts of the capital plan. Scroll down a little bit, please, Maria. Thank you very much. So the initiative one really ties to the budget, and goal 2, which is to successfully help town administration manage a balanced budget through what we still believe with some of the outside impacts is a little bit of an unknown revenue and cost environment still. I think we're starting to get a much better handle on where things may be going in the future, but still, I think we're in a little bit of an uncertain environment still. I don't think everyone is really sure what the economy is going to do. It did grow at a slightly higher rate than most people anticipated this last quarter, but I still think we're a little in flux. So that's the main initiative that we have right now. Initiative 2, this really ties to the reliable financial statements. The collector has done an amazing job, our treasurer as well has done an amazing job over the last year of really discerning the past due real estate amounts, which are been lien to the tax bills, and we do have liens on the properties, and evaluating what we can do in those processes to ensure that that money comes in. Last year, we collected well over $1 million of the outstanding lien balances. But it's something that is really important to understand, and that certainly helps in the generation of free cash as well. And initiative 3 is really creating a standardization of reports and additional fields relative to the capital program software, because we're really striving to be able to provide accurate data in terms of the impacts to the tax rate, because as everybody knows from that collision schedule, that presentation, we have a lot of projects. Most of those most likely would be debt excluded, and that will certainly put additional pressure on the tax rate as we move forward. Very briefly, this year, I'll highlight the first one. I know that Jill did mention this with the tax bills. This was a really critical thing that happened in the assessor's office, is that this was our 5-year revaluation. It was a requirement for a revaluation of all the properties in the town. It was a very long process to be able to set the fiscal 24 tax rate. I want to give kudos to the assessor, Rob Rainey. It was his first time going through this process, and he did manage it very well. So we were successfully able to complete that and get the Bureau of Local Assessments buy off. So that was really, really critical. We're working on we rolled out a procurement platform online, which is helping to make the procurement process, because we do so many procurements, smoother and more efficient, which is a great benefit to all the departments that we work with in terms of that. And we did have some staff vacancies, and I am proud to say that we have filled all of those. So we are now working on, with Sue and Maria, training the people that have come on board, getting them up to speed so that we can get back to making sure that we're providing the data in a timely and efficient manner to everyone. Next slide. So here, I think, Madam Chair, I'll be happy to answer any questions about the budget that people may have. We did not ask for any new positions or any expense increase requests, and Finance Department, which does include the Assessor's Office, Collector's Office, Treasurer's Office, and Procurement and Accounting. We didn't have any capital requests this year either. Now you're muted, Madam Chair.
Again, 3 years and still not trained. How often do you have to do the reassessment for the AAA rating?
Well, we don't have to do it specifically for the AAA bond rating. It is statutorily, it used to be every 3 years you had to do a townwide reassessment. That changed with the last Municipal Modernization Act to every 5 years. So our next complete revaluation of the town will be for fiscal 2029.
Oh, okay. Congratulations. Thank you. That's quite
We
an
do
accomplishment.
interim. It was quite an accomplishment. I will say we do interim revaluations across the town, but undertaking the complete revaluation with the outside consultants is quite a large undertaking, and Rob did a great job managing that process.
Thank you. Okay. Questions for Brian from anyone on the Finance Committee? Joe?
Brian, I'm curious, there's a cost to a AAA rating. And my background is in corporate, not municipal. But have you got any idea what the cost is? If you have less than a AAA, a double B, or
Sure. I think that for the town of Nantucket, and you're right, there would be a cost for many, many entities to not have the AAA rating, Joe.
I mean, there's a cost to have it. It's
Go ahead. Can you define that a little bit more? Because I think from my perspective in the municipal world, the cost to not having it is more of an interest rate cost.
Yes, but leverage is cheaper than capital. And my understanding of municipal accounting may not be good enough, but debt is the cheapest source of capital in the corporate world. I can't imagine that it isn't cheaper in the municipal world as well. Am I wrong?
No, you're not necessarily. It's certainly gotten a little more expensive in the last couple of years. However, unlike the corporate world, municipalities are limited in how much debt they can actually authorize. Granted, the town of Nantucket has a substantial amount of capacity, but I think the major difference between corporate and government is the fact that if we leverage the low cost of borrowing, we either have to do a debt exclusion, which would increase the tax rate, or we would have to fund that debt service within Proposition 2.5, which would detract from our ability to provide the services, because that money would be funneled into debt service rather than other operational expenses. The majority of our revenue comes from the tax base, unlike the corporate world, which can alter prices or things of that nature to account for that increased debt expense. So we have some limitations that I don't think you would see in the corporate world.
So you're telling me that it's different, which
it is a little bit different, yes, but you're right. I mean, it is cheaper the debt is certainly cheaper than it has, but it is certainly a cheaper way, but we have some limitations that would really prevent us from leveraging all of that capacity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Other questions for Brian? In which case we'll move. Thank you, Brian. Amanda, please.
Good morning, everyone. Amanda Perry, I'm the HR director. So I'll start off with our goals, but I also want to first share with everybody the staffing of our office. So our Human Resources office is staffed with 4 full-time employees, and our office is located in Town Hall, 16 Broad Street. So we have 3 major goals here before you, and our goals align with the goals of town administration. First, we want to place emphasis on maintaining compliance with state and federal requirements and making sure that our policies for managing personnel are up to date. In addition to that, we want to recruit and retain a diverse workforce to meet the needs of our organization. I think earlier today we talked about vacancies, and we have roughly 60 positions that we're actively monitoring through the process of recruitment. Goal number 3 is aligning our personnel management with contract negotiations and also the objectives of the board's strategic plan. For fiscal year 25, it's preparation year for contract negotiations. As you know, we just completed negotiating our union contracts, and those contracts now expire the end of fiscal year 26. So fiscal year 25 will really be a preparation year for us. In regards to initiatives, we are working to advance training and development opportunities for employees across the town. Internally, we have a work group that's focused on training, employee morale, and leadership, and we're developing a plan for this full calendar year to have training opportunities every month that are available to all town employees. We want to leverage technology to improve efficiencies, but also make data available. So I know that the turnover rate, the number of town employees that we have, the vacancies is something that gets requested a lot. And it's also important, it relates to our housing initiatives as well, the employee data. So by using technology, we'll be able to have this data at our fingertips. And the technology that we use is called NeoGov. It's a software. We use it for applicant tracking, all the way through onboarding our new employees. We also use technology to evolve and adapt our hiring strategies. We talked a little bit this morning about remote work. We're really working to revamp our remote work policy. We have various categories of employees. When I say categories, I mean some people commute on a daily basis to work. Some people work full remote. Some people work every day in the office, and then you have hybrid workers. They can work at a remote location, or sometimes they're required to come to the office. And some of our most recent hires actually live off the island. We utilize some of the housing stock that we have that was purchased by the town to place these employees when they're here. So they come for, say, a week, a month, and we place them in employee housing through the town while they're here working in their office here. And then initiative for developing succession planning. We did a succession planning study in the prior fiscal year, and we just want to make sure that we are prepared for when there's turnover of key positions in leadership across the town. Current year accomplishments. We continue to focus on recruitment, professional development. A major accomplishment was the completion of contract negotiations for all the contracts that expired June 30th, 2023. And we just continue to focus on retention initiatives and creative ways to attract and retain staff for the town. And then for EIRs for position reclassifications in various departments, 50,000. Various departments put in requests to modify current positions that are within bargaining units. So this $50,000 is broken up across different position requests to modify current union positions, and those require collective bargaining to do any implementation of those requests. For operating expenses, my EIR for NeoGov services, that's our software to manage recruitment and onboarding. We're requesting to add a module called eForms and Learn. eForms will allow us to automate a lot of our form processes, build workflows, in addition to not just onboarding, but internally after someone's hired, vacation requests, carryover of accruals and things like that. A lot of our internal processes to be automated. The Learn platform will help us track professional development initiatives. So we'll be able to send employees specific training requirements through Learn, but also track how our investments are reaching employees across the town.
Thank you, Amanda. Questions for Amanda? No? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Amanda.
All right, thank you.
Next up, IT and GIS.
Good morning, everybody. Can
Good
you see
morning,
me?
Michael. Yes, we can. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. No worries. First things first, good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Mike Alvarez. This is my first, actually, I'm now into my 7th month as Chief Technology Officer for the town and county of Nantucket. Thank you very much for having me here today. First of all, our goals, our goals have not changed much, as we sort of continue from my predecessor, the path that we've been on for the department. So goal number 1, to provide reliable, secure methods of accessing information technology services with hardware redundancy, disaster recovery, server virtualization, computer replacement programs, and software upgrades, along with maintaining and improving our network infrastructure, and improving our cybersecurity landscape. These goals are pretty much consistent and will probably remain consistent for the next several years, certainly, as the IT department continues. If we want to move on to the initiatives here, in conjunction with those goals, our initiatives here are to we have already implemented our SysAid help desk application, and in fact, in the next 8 days, it will become a full homepage for everybody within the town, within the core town departments, and it'll be used as a launching page for not just IT services, but also other services within the town, coordinating with HR, DPW, and so on. Town IT, we've also implemented or further expanded our cloud-to-cloud backup for services such as Microsoft Office 365, specifically in the areas of OneDrive and Teams and the SharePoint backend. And so making sure we have those secure backups, both locally and remote. Our migrated Exchange mail server is still in progress. We still have a hybrid environment, and we will soon be off of that, hopefully within this calendar year. Our second initiative is to continue improving our major infrastructure throughout the town, fiber, wireless, and so on, as well as in our third initiative, which is to engage town departments with town cybersecurity environment, protect against the growing cyber threats to municipalities and to the public. We have this past year done now 2 complete vulnerability scans internally. We'll be doing another one later this year, and then the next couple of months we'll be continuing with cybersecurity training and workshops for cabinet and core town services. Current year accomplishments. Move on to that. This actually it needs to be updated as of just a few weeks ago, because we promoted an IT generalist to a security systems administrator. We've also just now promoted another IT generalist to our software specialists. This allows both those positions to continue. With this, it now expands our software specialists. So we now have more coverage for supporting various software initiatives the town has been pursuing and continuing with our security initiative. We've just hired a new IT generalist as well, who will be starting in a couple of weeks. We've continued our cybersecurity awareness training. We have an initiative going on this year with training each month, as well as, like I mentioned before, a March session that will be a cyber threat exercise. And our implementation of the expansion of the town's wireless infrastructure, that just simply continues as always. Budgeting. Let's see. We are looking to expand the role, or rather create the role of the deputy IT director, as the role of the chief technology officer continues to expand within the town and county. This deputy IT director would be responsible for more of the internal department day-to-day stuff, while the chief technology officer itself will continue to access or to work with more of our enterprise funds departments, and coordinate more, especially with groups such as school and airport. Since and moving on to the operating expenses, our only EIR is for expanding our software licensing, hardware support, technology services. And then for capital, we are continuing with our maintaining network infrastructure, server virtualization, and our replacement of town computers.
Thank you, Mike. Questions for Mike? And seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good job on your first run for FinCom. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Oh, and just a plug for Mike and the training. Every year I say this about when we get the cybersecurity training modules sent to our emails, please do them. They're important.
Yes, please do. Thank you.
You're welcome. Jeff, you're up.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Unlike Mike, I have gotten to do this a number of times, so it's nice to be back in front of everybody. I'll try to be brief because I know we're right up against time and you still have a few more to do. Really, to kind of summarize our goals, I won't read them directly. In the last few years, we've obviously developed and are in the process of implementing a number of plans. And with all of our plans and operations and projects, we always base ours on data and science, and we're really trying to transition to not just collecting basic scientific data, but also more habitat related metrics and figuring out ways to communicate all of these things to homeowners and the general public and find better ways to connect people to the story of our natural resources, not just through numbers, but through things people understand, like dune grass and eelgrass that they're seeing, the shellfish that they're harvesting, and do those things. And one of the other goals that we've really been trying to work on with all of these plans is making sure that we get the best bang for our buck and overlap as many goals and objectives as we can. And one of the first ones we discovered is that some of our regulations, whether they're shellfish or Conservation Commission or some of the other ones we work with, are out of date. So we're working towards developing a more regular schedule for review and adoption and dealing with those things. And working with the community to do that. So we can run down to initiatives quickly. Obviously, this kind of focuses a little bit more specifically on how we're going to accomplish those goals. A lot of these activities are already going on for implementation and materials. And when we get to the budget, we'll see one of the things that we've identified through our initiatives and kind of our planning is, and no, not to our great staff here, scientists are not always the best communicators of their information, and we need to do a better job in getting materials for everyone to be able to understand in ways that are digestible to folks. And we're really trying to focus through our initiatives and getting information to people to minimize their impact on our natural resources, to, you know, be better stewards of the environment and go through. One of our big programs that we've just started is obviously through sustainability, and our sustainability programs manager, Vince Murphy. And one of the first actions we're looking to do there is to develop a scope and costings to develop a formal climate action plan. This would be kind of in keeping with the Commonwealth, where they've rolled their climate action plan into the statewide hazard mitigation plan, and we get us caught up there. So we're looking forward to kind of getting all of those things going. If you want to scroll down again, we can get to the accomplishments. We've been pretty busy, like I said, implementing plans. We adopted our water resource management plan in the last year through the select board and their strategic plan goal. So that was exciting. That was about a 2-year process for us to get that in front of everyone that was there. We again were able to do our eelgrass, bay scallop, and whelk survey, where we survey the harbor and can make a good population estimate on the 2 animals involved, and then kind of look at eelgrass coverage. Gives us a really great metric for seeing how our water quality initiatives are doing. And then started a number of other big projects. We're reevaluating the Nantucket Harbor watershed and groundwater contributions to the harbor. We are looking at how sediment moves through the harbor and using that to fuel a dredge plan. So we're not picking where to dredge just because we think that's where we should dredge, but to get it in the right spots, put the sand that we get in the right spot so we can keep it as long as possible for resiliency purposes. And do some great things there. One of our big accomplishments And I hadn't really thought about it until Rick said it to me the other day. We had a lot of internal shifting in the last year. So Vince Murphy was our coastal resiliency coordinator. He shifted to sustainability programs manager, and we promoted an assistant biologist into there. And then we refilled all of our other positions that were there. So we had a lot of, big hires for us. We're currently fully staffed with all of our full-time employees. So we've been very lucky there. But we've really brought in some great people that are doing some really great things. So for our budget for this year, for operating items, we have put in again for kind of an education specialist with health. We have a lot of overlap, especially related to water quality with those folks. And after some discussions with town admin and going through, we kind of decided, and I think everyone kind of agreed, that maybe looking at how we're dealing with that a little differently, instead of hiring a full-time person, we might be able to do some of the material generation and education requirements just through bringing in someone to do that as a kind of a one-off for some of that material development, and kind of refine that process before we go forward with something else. And our capital items, I'll do the second one first, because the first one is really new and it's a little bit more controversial, I think. Our baseline environmental data program is where we fund all of our studies for our water quality assessments that we do with SMAST. We do our base gulp and Wilk surveys through there. We've started into stormwater monitoring with the sewer department. And we've also been doing kind of erosion monitoring through there. It's really our data collection program that fuels everything. So we appreciate that going through. As far as environmental justice goes, we've been looking at adding this into our program. We've been really hitting a hurdle at state level permitting and state level grant assessments, where they've been asking for a great deal more environmental justice reach out and involvement. Just a quick example, we've been working on the permitting for Myakama Pond dredging, and to even apply for the permit, we had to provide them the application forms to meet our environmental justice communities for the area where we have a language barrier, and had to generate the applications in English, Spanish, and Portuguese to even file for the permit application. And in talking to those folks and really through their MVP program, they have suggested that if the town could develop a environmental justice policy where some of those would be covered up front and have that in hand, that would go to meet a lot of the requirements that they're putting in grants and permit application processes now, instead of being subject solely to, the whims of the state for what they'd like for each specific permit. So it's one of our goals of our sustainability program, but it's just something that we're seeing a lot and are trying to kind of keep up with the Joneses and try to get some really meaningful involvement with those communities and really put our best foot forward. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't know what environmental justice is.
Sure. So environmental justice, a few years ago, the state put out these maps. They're statewide, and they identify communities on a number of different parameters. And some of the parameters are income based, some are, language based, some are opportunity based, where it's just access to things. And they have certain goals for, as you're doing projects and activities, where when they've identified those communities in your area, that you need to try to engage through whatever the restriction is to try to give people equitable access to everything. So it's one of those great state programs where they implemented it and said, here it is, you have to comply with it. We're not going to give you any resources or any guidance on how to figure it out, because we're figuring it out too. So we're really just trying to be a little bit proactive and try to get there. We have 6 communities that are mapped on Nantucket currently. The last mapping 3 years ago, we had 1. So it's expanding. And it's something too that, as we do projects in these areas, it's nice to find ways to get the people who live in the areas where we're doing things involved mostly. But we think it can be really beneficial for everyone.
Thank you. And my second quick question is, when you look for the educator or coordinator, will you reach out to, for example, Mariah Mitchell or to other organizations on island to see if there's someone within that organization that can support that work?
Absolutely. We're really focused on, one of our initiatives was to kind of enhance our collaborations. We know Ryan Mitchell's got great educators. The Conservation Foundation and Linda Loring have really been focused on that. So I think we probably have the talent on island to do that. But we'd also just like to make sure that, you know, we're bringing in the best resources that we can.
Absolutely. Thank you. Peter, you had waved. Do you still have a question?
Thank you. Jeff, just a quick question. Over the last 3 years, you've spent nothing on the conservation revolver, but all of a sudden you have a $35,000 budget. Why is that?
So we hold that budget that's there. That's a fund that we take in on applications where we're able to hire third-party or independent reviewers for projects. Kind of the biggest one that we had intended and why we budget for this is like the SBPF project. We have independent reviewers that come in, probably the most classic example. Our last reviewer for that project did that for free. That reviewer is no longer available to us, but as revolvers go, we at least like to hold that placeholder number in there should we need to hire a reviewer for other applications, not just that one, but for any application that comes in.
It's too bad because free was a good price.
It's the best price. I love it, but he unfortunately took a job. He has a job similar to mine in Chatham now, and he used to work for Woods Hole Sea Grant. So we have unfortunately lost our really great coastal geologist. So we're looking.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff. Chris?
Yeah, good morning, Jeff. Thanks for the presentation. I noticed that the Myocomet dredging is still listed as potential, and you talked about the permitting process. What are the issues between now and that being no longer potential, and where would you handicap that?
So when we originally wrote this and I sent this in, you know, our budgets were due kind of back in October. We had just conducted the field work for all of our soil and water sampling that needed to go in. That's all come back, and all of the sediments are appropriate to be removed and can get disposed of without some sort of Herculean process to get it out or moved. The reason why we still list it as potential, though, is we still have permitting to do. And I know this will sound strange and kind of unbelievable. No one in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has ever tried to permit dredging a great pond. So we're kind of the guinea pigs to go through it. I know I have a lot of colleagues off island that have asked to kind of keep in touch about this because they like to do similar projects. So until we have permits in hand, we'll always call it potential, because if we can't get permits, then we're never going to actuate it. So,
And am I remembering correctly? We've approved the money for the complete money for that project?
Correct. And it's a project that we've collaborated with the land bank. They're also kind of partially funding, and we have a citizens group that is interested as well. But I think everyone, before they, you know, give checks to the town to help offset some of that cost, want to see permits at hand and what the final design will look like.
Great, thanks. And then quickly, I unfortunately wasn't able to open the Capcom thing that came across last night. Did they give a positive recommendation to the 500,000? The environmental data?
That I don't know.
Did
I'll find out and get back to you.
Yeah, not a big deal.
Yeah.
We'll hear on Wednesday anyway.
Yeah, they did, I believe.
Okay.
I think we're getting it for free cash. I'll give you the exact funding.
Yeah, it'll be our second year with that, and this first year it's been extremely helpful.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Denise.
Thanks, Chris. Nancy, can you please go on mute? Thank you. Okay. Leslie, you're up.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Okay, so I will start with just a quick overview about PLUS, which I think you're all pretty familiar. It's a combination of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission and Town of Nantucket staff. The relationship was formalized through an MOU that's been in place since 2012. It's been a very successful partnership, and it expanded an internal relationship that had been in place for many decades and added additional staff. Our office is located at 2 Fairgrounds Road. Right now, we have about 22 full-time employees, and we have several on-call inspectors. We have the director, the deputy director, which is currently vacant. We have a group of administrative specialists that provide support services to the entire office. And then we have 3 divisions. We have our land use and regulatory division, our regional focus division, and then safety and code compliance. So our department goals are fairly consistent from year to year. Goal 1 and 2 are ongoing to continue to improve tongue-tied this morning, to continue to improve coordination of permitting and to continue to encourage professional development for our staff. Goals 3 and 4 change from time to time. You all may be aware that the town engaged a consultant to review the Historic District Commission, to review their function as a commission, to review their processes, and to review the administrative component of that. So our goal 3 for this year is to improve efficiency with the HDC. And then goal 4 is to continue the transition of the management team. Our initiatives, initiative 1 and 2 are also consistent from year to year to continue to improve the coordination and the coordination and collaboration of the departments, and to encourage our employees to attend training either on island or off island, and to maintain our culture of teamwork. I think if any of you have been to Plus, you'll see that it's a great team and everybody works really, really well together. All of our administrative specialists and land use specialists are cross-trained, and it's a great place to work. Initiatives 3 and 4, those are new this year. 3 is related to that study that's ongoing with the HDC that should be presented to the select board probably in the coming month or so. So this year we'll want to, take a look at what that study has revealed and try to improve, where we can to make that process go smoother for the applicants, the staff, and the commission. Initiative 4 is to fill the vacant deputy director of planning position. That's been vacant since July 1st of last year. And then, of course, we want to promote the ongoing professional development and leadership and management for the person who fills that position. Our current year accomplishments, we've continued to maintain timely and efficient inspection and permitting services. We've continued our pattern of excellent customer service. This year, the long-range transportation plan was updated. That has to be updated every 4 years. We tripled public participation in that plan. That's done through our regional planning agency, the NPNEDC. We completed the open space and recreation plan for adoption by the select board. That was also done through the NPNEDC. We received approximately $1.5 million in grants for various projects. Some of those include the Wauwinet side path that's under development, a Complete Streets grant that was done with other departments for Williams Lane and Sparks Avenue, and a few others. The transportation program manager position was vacant. That was filled with Mike Burns, the former person who was in the transportation planner role. He's doing a great job. We had a land use specialist position that was vacant. That's also been filled. And that person provides service to the HDC, the planning board, and the zoning board when needed. And then we implemented the succession plan for the retirement of the director of planning. For our department exceptions, I did request an additional position, an administrative specialist. We have a lot of permitting, a lot of paperwork that goes through our office. Our current administrative specialists frequently work a lot of overtime in order to get the work done. We are an office that is largely regulatory, so work can't necessarily be put off until next week or even tomorrow. Sometimes there are regulatory deadlines that absolutely have to be met, so it requires people to stay until the job is done and the deadline's met. The funding for this position is actually less than the amount that we've been spending on overtime, so it seems to make a lot of sense. And going back to something that the town manager talked about in her budget presentation, the freedom of information requests, a lot of those come to Plus, and they take up a lot of our administrative specialists' time. And I'll just point out that for a lot of those, people put in a FOIA request for something that they could just come to the office and do themselves, but instead it's going through FOIA and it's requiring our staff to do a lot of legwork.
Thank you, Leslie. Questions for Leslie? No? Okay. Leslie, thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a
Have a
lot.
great afternoon.
Thank you. And to the people who are following on this section, apologies that as you can see, we're running a little bit late, and we appreciate your patience. Nancy, over to you, please.
Good morning, everyone. Nancy Holmes, Town Clerk. Thank you to the members of the Finance Committee for being here on this Saturday. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, Nancy, you're good.
Okay, sorry about that, that I had to be unmuted before. I didn't realize that. So just to get right into my department's goals, the goals this year, as you'll see, are very heavily related to the heavy slate of elections for the presidential year, which has, will already start before the next fiscal year with the March 5th primary. So the first goal that I have is to prepare for those elections and primaries, to attend all 3 of the Massachusetts Town Clerk State Conferences and election training by the State Elections Division. This has actually already started. In this fiscal year, we're having trainings twice a week for 2 hours. Sometimes once a week. We have a state conference coming up next week. And, with the changes of the Votes Act last year, the Votes Act, we have, just a lot to prepare for. And a lot is driven by the vote by mail and new technology. We have a new voter registry system that they're going to be rolling out. So it's been a lot to learn and just a lot of time to put in. The third goal is to complete the training of the hopefully soon to be hired new administrative personnel in preparation for this upcoming election year. That individual will have to learn a minimum of 7 different programs coming into this office. The initiatives related to the goals, including writing training lessons and prepare the schedule for election workers. There are not a lot of new rules with the Votes Act. Election workers are doing different things in terms of how they're processing vote by mail ballots. We have new technology. So all related to things like that. We'll be working with our state contracted company, LHS, to schedule further training on the new poll pads. This will be the 2nd year we'll be using those. We also have new tabulators last year, and I need to secure the lease of an additional tabulator and a couple poll pads for the 2024 elections coming up to be able to process the amount of ballots that we'll have, particularly in the vote by mail. It's largely driven by that, as I said. And to hire the election workers for the early voting periods, I should say, for each election, and to help execute the vote by mail, process all those ballots. The second initiative is to attend biweekly and/or monthly webinar trainings. As I said, that's already begun. It's often weekly. And the third initiative is to organize state training sessions for the new hire, who will have to learn the state vital registry, the state voter registry, election law, and several other database programs that we use here in the office. To move on to the current year accomplishments, we were able to purchase, train for, and utilize the poll pad devices, which were approved by the Commonwealth a couple of years ago at all the elections and town meetings this past year. And I think that made the check-in process more streamlined, less paper-driven than to have to look through the big voter lists. And for our purposes, it also made the post-election tallying process more streamlined and precise. I was able to study for and sit for the Massachusetts Municipal Clerks exam. Results still pending on that. And both myself and my assistant were able to continue with our training by attending both state and regional city and town clerks educational conferences. And the assistant town clerk has also been able to start last year classes towards her future certification as a certified municipal clerk, a certification I was able to obtain back in 2012. So as you see, everything I've got is really related to the big election year this year, including the exceptions. I've asked, I should preface this by saying the state will refund the towns, the municipalities for the extra cost of postage. And they will also, with the exception, I should say, of postage for vote by mail for the local election, they will refund the postage for the state elections. And they will refund a large portion, not quite all, but a large portion of the cost of staffing for the early vote in person. That's the 1 or 2 weeks prior to the state elections that we're mandated to have the voting in the hallway here. We need to hire extra workers for that. So that sort of explains 1 and 2. And the third expense increase is related to the lease of additional poll pads and the purchase of an additional ballot box for the 2024 elections. And I believe that is all that I have.
Thank you, Nancy.
If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I will. Any questions from the committee? And seeing none, thank you, Nancy. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Chantal?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Chantal Blois Murphy, Director of Culture and Tourism. Culture and tourism is super easy to get through. So we don't have any asks. We're keeping everything the same as last year, outside of increasing $2,500 for the fireworks show for 4th of July. Which is already written into the contract. So we've known about that for some years now. So our goals for this year is to continue to support the underfunded cultural organizations and programs to attract diverse audiences, to update the Culture and Tourism's webpage on the town's website and increase social media presence, to create a robust series of off-season activities within the Nantucket Cultural District, which the Culture and Tourism Department manages. Events that we've been throwing around are things like Act Local Fest, bringing back the long-missed Chowder Fest, as well as support the cultural partners within the district that are already planning these fabulous festivals and programs. And then to support the town's sustainability initiative by leveraging the importance of tourism stakeholders' involvement in promoting and participating in sustainable business practices, and to expand the Summer Children's Beach programs and activities to be more diverse and inclusive. We have a lot of great events planned for down there this year, coming back since COVID happened and kind of had us trickle down the programming down there. And then also to spearhead the return of the passport application acceptance facility on Nantucket. Last year was a big year for us. It's kind of wild to try to sum it up into these little accomplishments, but it was a big year for working with the Cultural District and the local cultural council. We created a pretty robust social media calendar that for the Cultural District, that is, that engages visitors and residents and promotes local island events and initiatives. We were able to get a kiosk, an events kiosk that now lives in the Visitor Services Office. And we actually purchased another one through a grant for the Greenhound building as well. So we're bringing all of the great events and initiatives that happen throughout the island to folks in high trafficked areas. We also partnered with 13 local nonprofits and 6 departments to promote and support Nantucket's diverse cultural heritage, and received over $70,000 in grant funds from state organizations to support Nantucket as a cultural heritage site. So last year was a big grant writing year for me. I was thrilled to be able to offer a lot of our local partners micro grants through those funds that were received.
Well, that part was easy. Thank you, Chantal.
You guys have to sit through a lot. I'm trying to make it easy for you.
Any questions for Chantal? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, and last but not least, Health and Human Services. Thank you, Jericho.
Oh, I'm also here.
Oh, and thank you. Thank you, Roberto. I didn't see you. You're, this big on my screen. Thank you.
Ah, burn. That's rough. Health and Human Services had a pretty good year this year. We've been, I would say, fully recovered. COVID is not over, Chantal. It is ongoing. So as we move into the next year, we are starting to expand our public health nursing program. So with that, we're in the current process right now of certifying all of our refrigerators and our freezers again, getting all that recertified with the state so that we can expand the vaccine offerings. So if things go well by the end of this year, we'll be able to offer all the school vaccinations as well, which includes MMR, hepatitis, flu, COVID, and if we can, we're looking to also expand to travel vaccines, which includes yellow fever. So we would be able to have that sort of clinic here instead of having people go off island to get that. So that's really big. The short-term rental regulations are moving forward. That has been really good. Yeah, you can move on, Maria, to the initiatives because that's initiative number 2. The short-term rental regulations are moving forward. We did speak with GovOS this week. They are on track to get the system up and running this coming month. So that's really good. We just did a user acceptance testing review with the group that the operations group is Matt Haffenrepper, Penny Dye, Lisa Wynn, Kathy Baird, and myself. So that's been really good. They provided some great comments, and I believe Matt is setting up a small summary document that we can send to GovOS to get everything fixed. Once they fix all those things, the website and registration should be up a couple weeks after that. So we're in good move there. We've been working with Vince to look into some of the work of climate change, which is really interesting to see because it's not just erosion. When we look at climate change, we're looking at entire changes of the ecosystem. That is one major part of it. So that includes bringing up different types of mosquitoes, different types of ticks, and with those new mosquitoes, ticks, and bugs also come new different types of diseases. So for example, just a quick example, the Lone Star tick, which is coming up from the south, is now becoming one of the more predominant ticks on the island. And with that, Lyme disease is probably going to start going down, but we're going to start seeing higher levels of Ehrlichia and the alpha galactose allergy, which makes you allergic to red meat. So we're working on that. So if we can move up. So we had a little bit of turnover due to some retirings. We had some very long-running staff members. Ann Medina and Barrett Ann Medina and Ann Barrett had been here for almost 30 years each. So they retired after a long, illustrious career. Heather Francis had to leave off island due to a housing situation, so we did lose her, so we had to replace her with another nurse. And then Michael Maynard has been fantastic in our water contamination group, the PFAS group, but he is also little known. He's also working on our drinking water regulations. He's also helping with the air quality testing in some of our town facilities. He's working with our new police chief regarding water testing there. So he's pretty big. He's doing a lot of work, and I expect that to be a big portion of what we do this coming year. And then I don't believe we have any expense requests. Oh, yes. So what we had that same education and compliance specialist that I believe you spoke with Jeff about. And then what we did run into this coming year is we haven't updated a lot of our contracts and funding for the needle disposal program, the weights and measures program, which is handled by the state, and our Visiting Nurses Association. So when I looked at those line items, we hadn't updated them in over 5 years, and we had some pretty big overages these last few fiscal years. So I'm just trying to bring that up so that we can cover costs this year.
Thank you, Roberto. Questions for Roberto? Always an interesting topic, Roberto, I have to tell you. I'm going to avoid the Lone Star tick, I think. So
We're going to ramp up education on that one because it's a big deal.
that seems like a very unpleasant one. So
yeah.
Good. Okay, thanks, Roberto. Everybody in the general funds presentations, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. It's always helpful for the committee to get to hear what is happening on the front lines. Just one point, if folks want to, we don't have a break for a while. I don't want to take a break now because we're already running behind. However, if somebody wants to get up and go get a coffee and come back to their desk, of course, just go ahead and do that. Okay. Chief, welcome. Nice to see you.
Good morning. Thank you. It's good to be with you all.
And over to you.
All right. Thank you. So we have a couple of goals. We have goal 1 of implementing changes as a result of the Police Reform Act. And then goal 2 is the continued oversight of construction projects. I'll just get into some of the initiatives related to those goals as far as how we're going to move to accomplish them. So the first one is managing post-recertification. I don't know how much you all know about that, but that was part of the Police Reform Act a few years ago. And it really did require a lot of different, it impacted all police agencies across the Commonwealth quite a bit in policies that needed to be rewritten. And then, of course, practices needed to change as far as hiring, as far as recertification and certification of officers. So there's a lot that kind of goes into that. So we're continuing to respond to that change in law and make sure that everything we're doing here is consistent with that. Second initiative is pursuit of MPAC accreditation. That's the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission. That's state accreditation for police agencies. The Nantucket Police Department has been in the self-assessment phase for a number of years, and we're looking to move into the next phase, which would be we've reviewed all of our policies, we've updated them, we've updated our practices, and now we're ready to have outside people come into our organization and assess us to be sure that we are compliant with all of these standards. Just for you all to know, we would need to be compliant with 252 mandatory standards and 66 optional standards for our department. And it's a pretty significant accomplishment if you're able to reach accreditation. So I'm really looking forward to moving the department toward that over time. But certainly everyone wears many hats, as I've learned here on Nantucket, with everyone doing a lot of different jobs, trying to get the job done. So we are definitely everyone is working hard on many things, and this has been a challenge to be able to prioritize this, but I'm hoping to be able to do that moving forward. Number 3, the initiative is the Harbor Master Building Project down on Washington Street. This is ongoing. 4 is the Town Pier Rehabilitation Project. You've probably seen all the activity down there at the pier. We're looking forward to having that continue to move along and hopefully get closer to being done. The long docks are in place now, and we're looking forward to just the last finger docks being added. The Loran Barracks, for those of you that may or may not know what this is the housing for all of our seasonal staff in the summertime. We hire a good amount of community service officers in the summertime, and this is where many of them stay, a very critical part of our operations in the summertime. So there's a number of phases to this project. We're in phase 2 right now, working on the building envelope on one of the buildings. We hope to wrap that up this spring so it's ready for summer occupancy, and then we'll get back to phase 3 once we're through this season, hoping to wrap up this project maybe in 2025. Then the Harbor Master Maintenance Building Project. This project's underway as well. We're working on getting the floor poured. We anticipate that might be done this spring as well. And then moving on to police, we're not requesting any new positions in the FY25 budget. We did some reclassifications in FY24. But no new positions added to the FY25 budget. We have no significant increases to our budget other than just the impact of contracts that were agreed upon. That's really an overview of the police budget. And then the Marine Division separately. I'm moving along quick here, aren't I? I see all the scrolling on there.
You're doing great, Chief Justice.
All right. The Marine Division, increasing staffing levels, increasing staff skills, and improving beach safety. Some of the initiatives there, to accomplish those goals, hiring an additional assistant harbor master. So what we've done in FY24 is, some of you may have seen a new position that was just posted, which is a deputy harbor master position. So there's a bit of restructuring going on there with the vision of a harbor master, a deputy harbor master, and then 3 assistant harbor masters moving forward. So that's already in the FY24 budget, not asking for any new positions or anything there. The next initiative is funding the additional lifeguards and also getting the lifeguards to a higher level of licensure. So I spoke with the harbor master, and she's a trainer, and she's already working on this training. They're right now NASBLA trained, which is a U.S. Coast Guard trained, but not licensed. So we look forward to getting licensure for them in FY25 as we move forward. And the last initiative there is improving safety at the beaches with some new technology, such as drones and sonar devices. Again, speaking with the harbor master, we have made the purchase of a sonar device called an Aqua Eye. Of course, with every new device comes the training required to know how to use it. So that training will be at the beginning of this season, and I'm sure a little bit into the summer season as well. But we're excited to have that as part of the tools to help with rescues. No new positions added to the Marine Department. As I said, we just had some reclassification in there, and the deputy position in FY24, but nothing for FY25. And then the only capital improvement, or the most significant capital improvement project I think that's notable, is the public safety outbuilding. And you all probably know the history better than I do, but from what I've been able to understand, this is something that was part of the original public safety facility design. When the police portion of the building was built, there was the plan to have this facility built at that time, but we ran out of money. Then years later, when the FD was put on, the same thing occurred. It was part of the plan, but we ran out of money. And now it kind of sits as the unfinished part of the public safety facility, is having this maintenance building. So the maintenance building would be a 4-bay garage with bathroom, a lot of storage space that would allow us to put things like all of the repairs for cruisers, tires, brake pads, all the things that we need to store that are right now a little bit scattered around. And in addition, it would allow us to take some of the equipment that's outside, exposed to the elements. I'm sure Chief Cranston will talk more about this, but get it into a building so that it's not out there exposed to the air all year, which obviously degrades equipment. And then finally, it would give us a spot to be able to work on our cruisers. We do, as again, I learned, people here wear many hats. Some of our folks here are able to do some mild maintenance on some of our cruisers, and we just don't have a spot to do that now. So what ends up happening is they might pull a vehicle into the Sally Port, which is the area where we bring in detainees who have just been under arrest. Obviously, if we have a car that's up being worked on, that doesn't work. So we really don't have a spot right now to do that kind of maintenance on our cruisers. So this would be an essential building for us in order to have that space to store, work on, and also for the fire department as well. But I'm sure Chief Cranston will talk about that. So that's really an overview of FY25 that I've learned in the last 20 days of work, and I'm happy to answer any questions with my limited knowledge from those 20 days of work.
Thank you, Chief Casper. And I have to ask, I can't resist this. So Norman, Deputy Harbor Master Norman, is not one of those positions you're filling, right?
He is not. No, he works for free. Yep, he doesn't need to be on our budget.
I hope he works for at least treats.
I bet he does. Yes.
For those of you that might not know, it's the chocolate lab that helps the harbor master in her job. So there you go. Okay, questions for Chief Casper. Chris, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation, Chief. That was great, and welcome. I'm curious, so you've inherited this budget, obviously, and obviously have come up really quickly up to speed on what's in it. Any surprises for you, things that you look at and kind of were taken aback by in terms of a budget you're inheriting?
No surprises for me, just looking on it, different for me in the way that it's organized. That's all just an adjustment for me. But as far as how the money is being spent and what it's being spent on is extremely consistent with my experience in police budgeting.
Great, appreciate that. Yep. And one of the things in the last couple of years that's been all over the map is our ability to recruit the CSOs. Have you had an update, or are you aware of how the CSO recruiting for the summer positions is going for this year?
Yeah, so we open those up and we have, a steady, a small but steady stream of applicants coming in. I've spoken with Lieutenant McVicker, and it's my understanding that he feels that we're on task to be able to get those positions filled. I think, the challenge that we have that I'm sure you're all aware of is just we currently have 6 police officer vacancies. And the challenge in our building whenever we have police officer vacancies is that the vacancies always come out of the same spot, which is police officers, the people who are out on the street that you all see driving around doing the work. Sergeants and administrative staff and all of us, that's not where the vacancies are. So it's a significant portion of the people who are doing the work. So having those 6 vacancies is very difficult. And then, of course, even if we hire someone, as many of you probably understand, the hiring process is months long. The training process is 6 months in the academy, and then 4 months of field training. So even if you walked in today, Chris, and you wanted a job and we hired you, I wouldn't even be able to put you on the street for 12 to 14 months. And that's really contingent upon getting you into an academy. So that's the challenge with having vacancies in our police department, is it just takes so long to fill them. And we're so in need of staffing in the summer months here. So that is the challenge.
It'd probably take you a little longer to get me on the street.
I have full
Probably need some
confidence that you
additional
can do it.
training. Thank you for that. I think the only other question I had, the Harbor Master building, you probably don't have the historical context. I think this is the first annual meeting I can remember that we haven't been asked for more money for that. What is the status of that? Have we awarded a contract on that? And we breaking ground on that sometime in the foreseeable future? Do you know?
I do have a pretty good knowledge of it, but honestly, the deputy is on here and he has an extensive knowledge that I could never even imagine mirroring. So deputy, if you want to make a comment about that.
Hey, Charlie, we got to get this one off the ground.
Good morning. Well, we hope to, but as you all have seen through various projects, costs have just keep going up. What we did last year is put out a contract for a new architect to value engineer the drawings that we have already, to see why this project keeps coming in. Every time we put it out to bid, it'll be coming up on the 3rd time, the project keeps going up and nothing's changing. And we're not getting a lot of interest for contractors, which isn't helping us with our costs as well. So we have meetings scheduled coming up over the next month with the new architect to give us some ideas of how to improve the procurement process, maybe scale it back, change some materials. As you're aware, it's a very challenging location in the flood zone, and the foundation was a little bit complicated. So we're thinking that maybe we can change that design a little bit on the foundation to not scare away so many contractors and keep the costs within our budget. Our primary goal is to have that come in with the current available money. So that's our plan. We plan to get that project out on the street for bid again, hopefully by May, and then we'll see where it comes.
Yeah, thanks. That's all I had, Denise. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Chief Casper? Okay, thank you, Chief Casper, and welcome. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Great presentation. Thank you. Thank you, Charlie, for being here. Okay, Chief Cranston, over to you, please. And if you're speaking, you might be muted. I can't see you on my screen.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for having me. So just going over the fire department, obviously the mission of the fire department hasn't changed. But to go straight down to our goals, we're still trying to, a lot of these goals you may or may not notice are fairly similar to the goals we had last year. And a lot of that is because of what Chief Casper just talked about. It's increasing the number of staff that we have and the time it takes to bring them on board and get them properly trained so that they can perform the work and count towards our staffing levels. So with that being said, our first goal is, again, to increase the number of advanced life support certified firefighter EMTs that we have in the fire department. So everyone in the fire department is currently an EMT level technician. But what we're trying to do is increase the number of actual paramedic level providers that we have so that we can make a real difference and just be able to do a lot more for a patient who may be sick or injured. Again, with that, we're trying to increase those numbers, but also increase the number of overall firefighters, just because we're trying to improve the efficiency of the department. And right now, we just have a lot of people within the department that are wearing many hats and trying to do many jobs. And what happens is you find yourself sort of treading water, as opposed to being able to really move forward. So I think we have some things that are underway. We're in the process of promoting for firefighters to the rank of lieutenant. That's going to give us an extra supervisor on each shift that can sort of take on some collateral duties and hopefully increase the overall efficiency of the department. The third goal is to increase the resource capabilities of the fire department, and we've done that with the support of the town's administration and the townspeople, being able to provide the best equipment that we can and to properly provide preventative maintenance and purchasing new equipment. So those are the three goals that we have. Again, our initiatives sort of go along with those. We're trying to offer opportunities for firefighters to attend either the paramedic level or the advanced level of EMT certification. And the local fire union settled a collective bargaining agreement last July that provided some more incentives for firefighters to take on that program. Just for your own knowledge, a paramedic program is it's about 18 months to 2 years to complete the program. So it's quite a commitment, and it takes time, but I'm very excited about the opportunity to move forward with it. And I think we presently have 4 paramedics. We have 2 people that have gone through the training and are just awaiting testing. And then we have 2 people that are in the program right now, with an anticipation that we're going to have at least another 2 people in the program come September. So we're making progress in that. The initiative 2 goes to increasing the minimum staffing levels on each shift to be able to respond to emergency calls. And, the growth on the island, as you all know, has really just sort of outpaced the growth of the fire department, quite frankly. And so we're trying to play a little bit of catch up. And in the summer, when we have a significant increase in our population in particular, we have trucks and primarily ambulances that are out responding to calls back to back to back. And so we want to be able to make sure that we can provide the service and answer the calls that come in immediately. When someone calls 911, they need immediate attention. So we want to make sure that we can provide that, and we presently do provide that. But again, going forward, we just want to make sure that we keep up our capabilities. Initiative 3 is to increase the opportunity for formal training for the members of the department. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to put all of our new firefighters, as they become either first level officers, which is the lieutenant position, or captains, or move further up the ranks. We want to make sure we're providing them with the resources to be successful. And that includes providing opportunities for training, to be certified at the national level as a fire officer or fire instructor, and have those credentials and the knowledge to make the people that work under them successful as well. So over the last year, we've added 8 new firefighters. But again, like Chief Casper said, the 2 of those 8 firefighters that we hired started in January of 2023. And those 2 just in the last couple of weeks have started to count towards staffing. So we have a group of 4 that are going into the academy at the end of February. We have another group that's going in the end of March, and then we have a new firefighter that's going in June. So we're constantly putting them through the academy. Again, you have to apply to the academy, which is held in Stowe, Mass, and be accepted into a recruit training class. So it's not as simple as just sort of shipping them off. There's a lot of logistics that are involved with it just because of where we are, but also there's a process of getting them into the academy. So that's what we're working on. So I've put in for the budget, we're trying to, I put in a request for the addition of 4 firefighters, And the cost you'll see there on the slides is $317,000. And what we hope to do with that is like I said, we're trying to keep up with the growth on the island and being able to respond to calls in a timely manner and provide the best service that we can in the safest manner that we can. So what I've done is I've looked at every department around us, on the Cape in particular, that are comparable, have in the sense that they respond to a similar amount of calls and they have a similar population, and a lot of them also experience the seasonal influx like we do. So when I looked at those, you know, the lowest out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 departments that I looked at have 10 firefighters per shift. Right now we have 7. So they have 10, and then the least amount is 10. And they go as high as some departments have 15 firefighters per shift. So what I'm trying to do is add a firefighter per shift each year for the next couple of years, until we get to a point where we have 10 firefighters on a shift. And at that point, then reevaluate where we're at and how we're doing. So that's why I put in for that. You'll see underneath that, I also put in an increase in overtime of $100,000, because what I'm trying to do is, as we add firefighters to the shifts, I'm also trying to increase the minimum amount of firefighters that we have on duty. So although we are adding staff, and theoretically you may think that should reduce overtime, and I think it will eventually, in the short term, we're trying to also increase the minimum staffing. So for operational expenses, you'll see that we've increased training to $20,000. That's again, it's all sort of related in the sense that as we bring new firefighters on, we have to train them. We have to buy them uniforms. You'll see the safety uniforms in the safety protective clothing. That's the firefighter gear. And then also books. We have to provide them with all the books that are required to attend the State Fire Academy. As far as capital items go, again, we're trying to stay on a replacement program for our apparatus, so that we are replacing stuff in a timely manner, and so that it's systematic, and that it is, we don't get into a situation where we have to replace, say, all of the ambulances at once, but we try and rotate them. And we do the same for the fire engines. We also want to prevent a situation where we're throwing sort of, you know, good money after bad, where we're sinking money into equipment that we should simply replace, but that we need it to work. So we're in the short term putting money into it. So engine 1, we've already replaced that truck. This is simply some additional funding because we're still trying to buy some equipment to outfit the truck. We do have some equipment that we've moved over from the other trucks, but we still are short a little bit of money that we're trying to completely outfit the truck. Ambulance 4. So we do have 4 ambulances. 3 of them we keep in service at all times. The 4th one we try and use as a reserve. So the way it works is our newest ambulances are the ones that go out the door first. And then as they age and we replace them, they sort of move to a second run ambulance, a third run ambulance, and ultimately a reserve piece, so that we try and get every bit of time out of them that we can for their useful life. Engine 2 replacement. So we have 2 engines. It's our engine 2 and engine 3, and these are the Wildland. They look like a regular fire truck, but the capabilities that they have are that they have a Wildland capability where we can put them into a pump position, and we can, for all intents and purposes, squirt water out of the hoses while those trucks are moving. Most fire trucks don't have that capability. These trucks are just simply getting older. They're nearly 20 years old, and so we're trying to systematically be able to replace them so that we do have the capabilities to respond to an incident, in particular in an area on the island where we may not be able to get a normal fire truck into. We're in the process of hiring, replacing the deputy chief who resigned earlier this year. And also we are in the process of hiring another deputy chief's position. So the cost of an administrative car is for that second position that we haven't had in the past. So that automobile is important because the deputy chiefs, they're on call after hours. They respond in the middle of the night from their homes. And it's very important that they are able to get on scene quickly and safely and have the proper piece of apparatus to get there and, make an initial size up of an emergency. Our ladder truck, we are requesting funding to replace. It's a 20-year-old fire truck. I've been on the department now for, I think, 1 year and 4 months. In that ladder truck, we actually have only had on the road for maybe 2 or 3 months out of that entire time. It's been out of service with various problems. So we're certainly at a point with that piece of apparatus where we simply need to replace it. And I don't want to speak to why we have that piece of apparatus. I think it was at the time probably the best piece of equipment for the department, but now I think we would be better suited to have a ladder truck that maybe is a little bit more standardized in the industry as far as being able to be more easily repaired when there is an issue, or to even have the preventative maintenance performed in a more timely manner when that time comes. That's all I have for the capital. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Peter Schaefer?
Yeah, hi, Chief. Couple questions. One is, when we buy a new fire engine or a new car, do we sell the old ones? Is it possible to sell them?
We typically trade them in.
You can trade them in on the new product. So the price that you have down here, does that include the trade-in?
No, that does not.
Okay, so just approximately.
That's simply the price of the piece of equipment. If we, like for the ladder truck, for example, if we were to purchase a new ladder truck and it costs the $2 million that we're asking for, we would be hoping that we could trade in the ladder truck that we have and take some of the costs off of that $2 million.
So would it come in like at $300,000 or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that may be a little bit more generous than
what it would come through.
Yeah, but yes, there is. We're in the process of purchasing a new engine right now, and we have 2 old engines that have been sitting out behind the station for a while. We're going to trade both of those engines in we're going to get about $50,000 for the 2 of them combined.
Okay. Second question I have is on your payroll. Payroll's up 36% this year over last year. I'm a little kind of confused. How many firefighters do you have this year against last year? And how many of those firefighters are in-house against last year at this time?
So we've added, since last January, we've added 10 firefighters. Some of those were just filling vacancies, and there were 4 new positions that were also filled. But in addition to that, some people have been promoted and we're in the process of promoting. So I think the payroll is the payroll has gone up just for the simple fact that we've added to the number of employees. And so I think that's probably what's reflected.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief, is there anything that keeps you up at night that you can't get funding for? So, if in your perfect world, you would want funding for something that you worry about, but there's just.
I can just tell you that in the short time that I've been here, there's a lot of things that keep me up at night, but one of them has not been the support financially and otherwise from the townspeople and from the administration of the town. So those are not things that there's nothing that I really need that I've been told that is not something that we can ask for.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Okay, Chief.
Denise?
Yes.
I just want to comment, thank you, Chief, and I want to just point out the chief is away right now at a paramedic class that he's been going to for months. And he has a few months more to go, but he goes over every Saturday to do this class. So Chief, thank you for pushing through on this.
Thanks, Libby. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Libby. Okay, before we jump into the DPW, amazingly, we're back on track. I still think, so Libby, I'm suggesting, Mark Willett is off island, and it would be easier for Mark if we move this to February 1st, because frankly, we don't have much on our agenda on February 1st in any case. So if the committee is okay with that, I will ask Libby to ask Mark to move to February 1st for the water department. We'll take it off the agenda for this morning.
He's good with it.
Okay, thank you, Libby. I just want to make sure the committee's okay with it. We are back on track in terms of timing, so we will still be able to take a short break at 11 o'clock. At the same time, I would like to also move the water and potentially finish up a little earlier today. Is that okay with everybody? I'm guessing, can I see a thumbs up? Thank you. Thank you.
So Denise, should we let solid waste, island home and airport know they're going to be moved up a bit?
Yes, please do.
Okay. All right, Brian, can you and Maria do that, please?
Yep, please do. Then everybody's done a little bit earlier. Thank you. Okay, Chris, over to you. It's Chris Lowe, correct? That's presenting now?
No.
No.
Hi.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Drew Badnote here, Director of Public Works.
I'm sorry, Drew.
Not a problem. Chris will take you
It's
guys.
solid waste. Yep. Okay.
later.
I've got you backwards. That's bad. I'm sorry, Drew. Apologies.
Not a problem. I just want to apologize in advance. I'm kind of battling a cold, so I'm raspier than I normally am. So if there's anything you guys don't understand, feel free to interrupt and ask me to repeat or clarify.
Thank you.
So the mission of the DPW is to provide and maintain public services necessary for the economy, growth, and quality of life for the citizens and visitors of Nantucket. The DPW supports the 5 priorities of the Select Board's strategic plan, including transportation, environmental leadership, housing, efficient town operations, and quality of life. Certainly not going to list all of the activities that the DPW takes on throughout the year, again, in an effort to keep this thing on track with the time. Our department goals, goal number 1 is to maintain and improve and preserve public infrastructure in safe and functional condition. Goal 2 is to assist in the transition and development of the new townwide stormwater management program and the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. And goal 3 is to conduct a systematic review, analysis, and action plan for all DPW functions and services. Quickly, our current year accomplishments. I started with the town at the end of July in 2023. Additionally, we've successfully filled key positions. Denise already mentioned Chris Lowe and Elise Kellogg, who are solid waste manager and solid waste coordinator. Again, more on them later. Charlie Palaki, the Parks and Rec manager, has continued to work on implementing recommended improvements to the recreational and parks grounds and facilities and programming. A lot of that comes out of the Parks and Rec master plan that was developed over the last 1.5 to 2 years. We are currently working on a new DPW facility. The planning and design work is ongoing. We've just begun the process of permitting. And that's a really fun and exciting project to be a part of. Additionally, we're working on improving collaboration between planning and land use services in the DPW to plan, design, and construct transportation improvement projects island-wide. We are in the middle of designing or final design of the Newtown Road improvements, the Surfside Area Road improvements, so that'd be Lovers Lane, Orkawa, and Monahans, which we are hoping to implement shortly after the conclusion of the water main extension west of the airport. There was a presentation the other night on Mass DOT's improvements, which we're involved in the final design of. Additionally, we're working, like I mentioned, on supporting the transition of the stormwater program to the sewer department and the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. Our facilities group is working on assessment and planning of improvements to town-owned facilities, including streetlights and town employee housing. The town's working really hard on creating new opportunities for employee housing, and as such, we need to be prepared to support that effort. we are working on an updated 5-year capital improvement plan for roads, sidewalks, cobblestone streets, and multi-use paths. That's based on engineering reports and updated pavement management plan. That also includes the integrated GIS data dashboard, which was developed for better planning and budgeting for sidewalks and shared use paths as well. It's a very involved project or program in general, constantly communicating with the water department and sewer department to understand what their plans are going forward, so that we can have a coordinated effort to ensure the best outcome for our capital plan. Lastly, the Central Fleet Management Study was completed and implementation of recommendations has begun. We have 2 mechanics and a Central Fleet Manager who don't just take care of DPW vehicles, but vehicles and equipment from other departments as well. So they're very, very, very busy. If we go down to the actuals. So these are our capital requests and increase requests for fiscal year 25. Currently, our Parks and Rec department has 1 employee, that's Charlie Palaki. Our intent is to have 3 new positions, so that'd be the laborer, the senior equipment operator, and the maintenance tech. That's an M2, M3, and M4 position. We're looking to bring 3 additional folks in and basically add them to our operations division within the DPW and get to the point where we're staffed enough to separate 3 folks out at a minimum and have them focus on Parks and Rec facilities. Right now, we spend a lot of money on contracts with companies to maintain our parks and other public facilities. And the intent is to do a lot more of that in-house. I think we'll save money and inevitably have a better product. Because all those contracts that we manage, there are definitely a lot of challenges being at the mercy of those that we are forced to hire since we don't have the staff internally. As far as Central Fleet, we're looking to add a mechanic. That's what the Central Fleet mechanic maintenance technician is. Right now, we have 2 mechanics. There are a lot of 2-person jobs working on some of the fire apparatus and some of the other large vehicles and equipment that we have here at DPW. So as you can imagine, with just 2 mechanics, if one's out, sick or takes time off, we're pretty shorthanded. Again, in taking care of vehicles that are from the sewer, water department, police, fire, et cetera, even just keeping up with day-to-day maintenance is very demanding. So right now, it can be tough to do some of the larger projects and repair work with everything else going on. So we're looking at a mechanic for next year. I'll quickly run through the operational expenses. The rentals and leases is really just the printers and copiers that are on our budget. Our current budget's 4,000, but all of those combined, the contract is 11,000. So looking to increase that to match the actual cost of those.
Drew, if I can interrupt you for a second, you only have to speak to things that are over $10,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
So for the trees increase, that's largely as a result of the southern pine beetle and turpentine beetle infestations that we are starting to experience on town-owned properties. It's important that we get ahead of those. We were fortunate enough to catch it and address it early enough at the water department parcel off of Pulpus Road. But we expect those to continue, and we'll need to rely on our contracts to be able to bring in folks from the outside to handle those when we can't internally. The licenses line item is a result of us having the budget or wanting the budget to send our staff to get CDLB and CDLA licenses. It's important that we have plenty of licensed staff here at the DPW. Additionally, when the town pays for those licenses, those employees sign an MOA that requires them to work for the town for 3 years. So it helps us attract and retain critical staff. And then lastly, the increase in road materials. We do have contracts with companies off island for sand, gravel, crushed stone, and other valuable resources, especially for gravel road maintenance when we go out and do grading, and we need to add the appropriate materials. We just don't have a way to get those materials here. So this is really for a hauling contract to allow us to get the appropriate materials to the island, so that we don't have to rely on local contractors and hope that they have exactly what we need and what we're looking for. As far as capital items, I'm going to group the first 7 together. These vehicles are long overdue. Right now, frankly, we're kind of desperate for vehicles. We have a lot of staff that are using vehicles that are 18, 19, 20 years old, one of which was recently totaled on Matticat Road. It's also incredibly hard to get replacement parts for vehicles that are that old. Sometimes we do salvage parts from used vehicles that are here at the DPW. And additionally, we have a lot of staff that are using vehicles that are really not appropriate for their day-to-day tasks. They're way undersized, and we have a lot of people sharing vehicles, and it makes it really hard for us to be efficient. The mechanic's truck, for example, is the front end and the chassis from one vehicle and a utility body from another that were kind of married to make one, useful vehicle. I want to also highlight the 9-foot dumping stake body truck. Right now, we're proud to say we have a pretty full department. We have a handful of open positions. In operations, we're looking to create another brush cutting and roadside mowing crew. We have the trailer, we have the mowers, we just don't have a vehicle to get a second crew out. So again, that'll really help us be a lot more efficient, especially during the summer months when we're incredibly busy. Facilities, right now we have 6 people and 2 working vehicles. So there's a lot of sharing, and there are plenty of days where I'm here, I know I'm not leaving, and I let people take my vehicle. And so we're trying to make sure that they have what they need to do what we ask of them. As I mentioned, we're working on the DPW facility design. There's about $1.5 million left in the original appropriation. This $1.2 million would allow us to complete the final design and remaining permitting for the new DPW facility. I don't know if anyone's been out to Tom Nevers recently, or if you've seen it on the Current or in the paper. We're looking for $2 million for debris removal and dune restoration. We're constantly communicating with Natural Resources and our consultant that's been working on designing and permitting that project for a while. And we're hoping that this will get us what we need to actually implement some much needed changes out of Tom Nevers Navy base and the field there. The next couple, the Jetties tennis courts, the playground facility at Nobody Fields, and the Tom Nevers playground reconstruction are all recommendations that came out of the Parks and Rec master plan. As you'll know, as I'm sure you know, the money was appropriated for a new field for a soccer field for Nobody. And so I think the playground would kind of fold into that and try to really make that facility what this community needs it to be. The next couple are essentially recurring capital appropriations. So the sidewalk improvement plan, island-wide road improvements, multi-use path maintenance, and cobblestone improvements. Obviously I think we have 110 miles of roadway that we maintain. And so this allows us to address, again, sidewalk, cobblestone, bike path, and roadway improvements island-wide, year in and year out. There was a report done by Beta Group, and to way oversimplify it, they basically said if you're going to pave everything next year, it would be, say, $400 million worth of paving. So if the pavement life cycle is say every 15 years, you take that 400 million divided by 15, and you're going to need X amount of millions a year. We know that it's unrealistic to do that. So in using the $3 million, it's not just for mill and overlay of the roads. We're also looking at an alternate surface restoration technologies, kind of like slurry seal and chip sealing and other things that really help make our money go a lot further. And the existing pavement roads that we have last a lot longer, which is kind of critical because I also, understand that there is a capacity concern with all the capital projects going on, the single paving contract that we have on island. We have to get a little bit more creative about how we maintain our roads long term. Next, we have the Sconset footbridge repairs. This number was based off of an estimate that was done by one of our consultants. Some of the improvements to that bridge were done internally by our facilities group previously. This is really for the footings beneath the bridge at the ground level to shore up that structure long term. Decommissioning of the fire cisterns. I was a little shocked. I'd heard of them, but they are kind of scattered all over, and they are a major safety hazard. So we're looking to basically fill those in, take the tops off, fill them in with either sand and gravel or flowable fill, and that'll make those areas a lot safer in the long run. As I mentioned, we're working on the final design for the Newtown Road improvements. We have a recent cost estimate, and so the $2 million that's being requested plus the money that we have left over from the original appropriation would be able to would allow us to implement those much needed improvements. And then lastly, a couple pieces of equipment. The turf maintenance equipment replacement and upgrade is again for the Parks and Rec group that we're working on creating. And it would give our staff the ability to maintain the Delta fields, Nobodier fields, etc., much better than they have been. Charlie's been working really hard on improving the quality of those facilities, and I coach soccer out here. I've seen it firsthand. They're in much better shape, but this would really be immensely helpful for us to do an even better job and do it in-house. And then lastly, the backhoe and the tractor are they're critical pieces of equipment for the DPW, and they are 15 and 20 years old respectively. So we are working on getting those replaced because they use those just about every day.
Excellent, Drew. Thank you very much. Okay, questions from the committee. Joe?
It's Joe Wright. Is there any joy in working with the land bank on some of the parks and recreation stuff? They've spent money on dog parks and the park down by the steamship. Are they opposed to doing stuff that would be of use to you, Drew?
We do work pretty closely with the land bank. Charlie also works closely with the schools and other organizations out here. I think that we as a community have a lot of needs and not everyone has the space for everything. So I think it's kind of critical that we work closely with them to figure out how our work day to day and our say capital improvements along with what they're planning and what the school's needs are is kind of imperative going forward to make sure that essentially everything's covered. Maybe the town won't be able to build everything everyone needs, but making sure that, that it's a coordinated effort.
Now, the land bank has cash, lots. There's no, they're not going to share any of their cash with you for Parks and Rec?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Has anybody asked them?
I'm not sure that they can, Joe.
Yeah.
They could go dog parks.
I know, but I
Yeah,
don't think that they can spend on, I don't think they can spend on something that isn't a land bank property. Libby, go ahead. You were going to.
Thank you, Denise. I was going to say something along those lines, and also to echo what Drew said earlier, we do work closely with the land bank. We've actually transferred properties to them that are maintained by them as parks and recreation and conservation open space properties. So the bottom line, though, is they can't spend their money on our property.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, boy, there's a lot in here. A question for Brian on how all the capital is parsed on the warrant and then subsequently at the ballot.
I'd have to go back to the list, but I think jetties and jetties, the supplemental for the design and the dune restoration are all debt exclusions. And the rest of it would be funded through free cash and raise and appropriate or transfer from other any unused capital projects from prior years. And
So all those will be grouped together as one.
And the vehicles are a capital exclusion, Chris, and the sidewalk is a borrowing inside the levy limit that we have projected a 10-year plan for each year.
So things like the jetties and that those will be debating as separate articles, but we're not going to be debating dump trucks and loaders, right?
You would have the opportunity for the discussion within Article 10 because that's where they would be, and there'll be a capital exclusion on the ballot.
Okay,
That
thanks.
answers-
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Drew, thanks for that presentation. You got a lot going on. The fire chief talked about benchmarking, sort of crew size and things against other communities. As we try to kind of grapple with the right size for the DPW on Nantucket, given all the growth that you have to contend with, did we benchmark any other communities and I don't even know what you would use. I don't know if you'd use miles of roads or other things about just kind of the general operating staff that should be required to do all the work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, there was a staffing report done that looked at all town departments. Of course, I don't have to explain this to you. It's a unique community, right? We go from 20,000-ish to 100,000-ish, and we have a large land area. I will say, as part of the DPW facility design, there is a table that shows essentially population, miles of roads, number of facilities, et cetera. And it compares what we would need for a DPW facility and staffing compared with other communities. I was a little surprised before I moved out here 6 or 7 years ago. I lived north of Boston, and I think the closest comp was Burlington, Mass. Much more densely populated, smaller land area, way more people than us. I think that it was kind of interesting just looking at the square footage of their facility versus what we would need out here. But it does kind of go hand in hand with the amount of staff that we have. So that's probably the closest comp. But again, we would love to lean a little bit more on seasonal staff, but I don't think we've had a ton of luck in recent years getting a major influx of seasonal summer staff. When we have, and there's a couple folks here at the DPW that started as seasonal employees, and now they're full-time year round. So we would love to continue that. But to answer your question, I think that with the 3 additional folks in operations that we would like to make into basically a Parks and Rec crew, and an additional mechanic, we would all breathe a sigh of relief around here with everything we have going on.
Okay, thanks. And I appreciate the commentary on the road improvements. It sounds like that's part of we'll know more with your pavement, what do you call it, pavement management plans being worked on. But I got the sense you don't think that we're going to fall off a cliff on the 3 million, that the 3 million kind of year after year is sort of doable. Sounds like it's not doable based on the data that you talked about, but do you have a sense yet, or do you need to do more work to know whether we have a big issue coming?
No, I wouldn't say we have a big issue coming. The reason I bring that up is, it's easy for a consultant to say, oh, you should spend 17 million a year on paving. And one, that's unrealistic from a financial standpoint for us as a community. But 2, we have one paving contractor. He can't do 17 million plus his airport projects, plus all the sewer projects and water and everything else in private parking lots and driveways and developments. So my intent of saying that the 3 million, I feel comfortable with it, especially when folding in other technologies to help extend the life of the pavement that we already have. We've done fog sealing on some of the bike paths. You don't notice it. It's not like a seal coating where you get that different color, you get that black layer on it. It's almost invisible, but it really extends the life of pavement. In order to do that, you have to catch pavement that's still in good working shape. So, you can't do it to a road that's already 12 or 15 years old, but 5 or 8 years into the life of the pavement, before it starts to crack, and before it starts to fall apart, you can catch that stuff and extend it by another 10 years. So for $100,000, if you get 10 years out of a road, that's money well spent. And we're trying to do a lot more of that around the island to get ahead of it rather than constantly just trying to play catch up.
Denise, I've got a couple more if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead, Chris.
Tom Nevers, the 2 million, that must have been before you arrived at that number before all the recent sort of erosion uncovered so much more out there. Is that going to be enough to do the job in the coming year?
Yes and no. It really hasn't changed, right? The coastline's eroding, and a lot of the stuff that's underground is now just moved to the beach. But it's all the same debris that was intended to be removed from its inception, just in a different spot. A lot of it used to be underground, up at higher ground, and now it's exposed down on the beach.
Got it. And then this one might be for Libby, or I'm not sure who, but the Jetties Beach tennis courts. I thought there was a plan to abandon those previously. No?
No, we have certainly have talked about it because of their proximity to the water, but no.
Okay.
There's a effort underway right now to look at all of the concessions, their condition and their historic relevance and coastal proximity and stuff like that. And I think that group may have actually sort of preliminarily said, the tennis courts are going to be here for a while, and they're not, that location isn't as much of a flood risk as a little bit of the lower lying areas around it. And it's very popular, and if they were a lot better, we could probably do more there and get some actual revenue.
Is there an opportunity to use the new school courts in the summertime for public use, or is that?
There is, you have to reserve them, and I can't remember, there's a little fee or not, but in the summer, yes, that is possible, but tennis is really popular. And there isn't a lot of non-private places to play.
Just to piggyback on that, the plan for Tom Nevers, I'm sorry, Jetties tennis courts, but the plan would be there. I think there's 6 tennis courts now. The plan would be 4 tennis courts and 4 pickleball courts, potentially. Kind of repurpose that space for a growing sport, which is pickleball.
Man, we've been building pickleball courts for a couple of years now. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Other questions for Drew? In which case, Drew, thank you very much. Hope you feel better. And thank you for being here today. Okay, folks, miraculously, we're back on track. So we have a break now from 11 to 11:15. I will go ahead and everybody take your 15-minute break, but be promptly back at 11:15, where we will then talk to Chris Lowe and the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. Thank you. Chris, I appreciated learning at the solid waste presentation on January 11th that you are very excited about the upcoming transition and project.
Denise, I couldn't be more excited about it, to tell you the truth. It's probably one of the main reasons I wanted to be considered for the job. And it's been very eye-opening, and I'm sure things are going to be much better.
I was explaining to Libby that I attended the meeting, and I explained to Libby that I thought George Aronson could explain nuclear physics to a 5-year-old. It was amazing how much more I understood with the way he explained it than I normally understand about these kinds of things.
George's demeanor is unbelievable, and the way he gets the point across is super. Yeah, really is. He's been invaluable to me.
Yeah, good, good. But we still have 2 minutes before everybody has to jump back on, so I just thought I'd take the chance while you and I were both on.
Sure. Awful nice of you folks giving up your Saturday like this.
Well, it's good for us to do them all together instead of piecemeal. So I think this was started under when David Worth was the chair of Finance Committee, so we just kept it going.
I see.
And you know, it's a Saturday in January on Nantucket. I mean, not for all of us. Some of us are in sunny Florida, but or elsewhere. It's okay.
Some of us are at an age where every day is a Saturday.
Yeah, that too, right, Joe?
That doesn't include the people in the town who work hard.
Notice that our member who is in Florida isn't back yet. So he's getting some sun.
I think we have I think there's a couple folks in Florida at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, Maria, over to you. It's 11:15, so I think we'll kick back off and try to stay on track. And Chris, over to you, please.
Thank you and good morning. So for over 25 years, most of the solid waste on Nantucket's been managed at an integrated facility complex at a 174-acre town-owned site at 188 Matticat Road. The service agreement for operating the complex is scheduled to expire on November 30th, 2025, ushering in a new era of waste management on the island to oversee development for new arrangements for 2025 and beyond, and to improve current and future operating practices. Town administration created a new long-term solid waste planning work group. So solid waste goals. You can kind of, summarize the solid waste goals as effective and transparent management of Nantucket solid waste today and into the future, consistent with principles of environmental leadership and sustainability and long-term economic programs. The initiatives, is to support new programs for waste reduction and reuse, improve the system of solid waste processing for implementing new methods of collecting food waste and organics, recycle paper, non-recyclable, non-compostable materials island-wide. We have to improve the system of solid waste processing by implementing new methods for collecting food waste. Oh, I just did that. Sorry about that. Have the town own and control all solid waste management facilities at the site by purchasing the composter and the transfer station, which Waste Option of Nantucket presently owns. We're preparing an RFP and new waste service agreement to procure through a competitive bidding process and private provider of solid waste management services for the town starting in December 1st, 2025. And to ensure a smooth transaction from present to future arrangements. Part of this is we have to expand the landfill as well to secure as much capacity for managing residual waste as the site can allow. So that's kind of a summary of the initiatives. I guess we can go to the budget.
Actually, Chris, could I ask you to back up and do the accomplishments? Because I think it's important that folks get a, run through this.
Oh, sure. Okay, yep. So on the accomplishments, besides hiring myself, we recently hired a recycling coordinator. And Elise Kellogg's done a great job so far for us. And so as far as the Nantucket solid waste is managed, 68,500 tons of all different categories of solid waste at the 188 Matticat Road facility. Mixed excavation waste. So solid waste is not static. It ebbs and flows, and really it's very hard to track it. There has been a relatively good tracking that George Aronson's provided for us through billing and all. But the largest item that solid waste has managed last year and this year is mixed excavation waste, which last year came in at 25,500 tons. And the leaf and yard waste was a close second for 11,500. And the composter processed 9,781 tons, that being food waste, organics, as well as municipal wastewater sludge. The recycling and composting at Nantucket Solid Waste Management Program diverted approximately 54,000 tons from the landfill. We take great strides in developing and identifying key aspects of the request for proposal, the RFP for the management of Nantucket solid waste. The RFP is scheduled to be completed and available to potential bidders sometime probably the 1st of October, possibly March. I'm not sure. There's a lot of review that has to be done. And the preparation, expiration of the waste service agreement for December 2025. Over at the landfill, for leaf and yard waste, Waste Options is producing a now organic compost, which has been named Nantucket Gold. They are going to start bagging this material and make it available to the public. I'm hoping for the spring season. I do have a phone call scheduled with Waste Options to have they can break out their marketing plan for us. And it's going to be a good thing. It's not the old compost that people have known. It's a very good material. It's very hardy, and it's going to be a great opportunity for all the town to take advantage of. We also conducted our first water-based paint or latex paint collection, and we diverted 4,300 pounds of paint for the recycling. And we have also held 5 hazardous waste collection events last year. Oh, actually this year. I'm sorry, fiscal year. And there were 6 scheduled, but one of them was canceled due to weather.
Great. Now we can go down to the exceptions in the ERRs. Thank you, Chris.
Yep. So I've requested a new position. It's being a Tioli attendant, but the Tioli attendant's going to have some very specific functions, not just be an attendant at Tioli. Our goal is we have requested the purchase of a hook lift truck so that we can be more self-sufficient and not rely on DPW to help us 2-3 times a week to clean out Tioli with items that are no longer wanted or weren't taken by the public. This attendant also is going to be trained to accept and store universal waste as well as latex paint. So we're gonna have specific days and collection times that this person's going to man and accept and store the material properly so that we have a good program and not today we collect it, but we don't do a good job at it. We can do a way better job, and with the proper training and equipment on site that we have are getting in place, it's gonna be much better. So we also have an increase in professional services. That increase is directly related to the RFP that we are preparing and will be reviewing, as well as taking on additional engineering services throughout the year and to get prepared for when we do own and accept the composter and the transfer station. So this is, you know, in preparation for 2025. And then we also, and the recycling and MRF professional services increase of $60,000 is kind of in conjunction with that professional services increase that we're looking for. So for capital items, as we've discussed, or I'm sure you're very well aware, that to purchase the composter for $1 million, which was a number that was set in the expiration for the service agreement. We also would like to purchase the transfer station for $3.4 million, so that we can, we feel it's extremely important for us to have the ability to manage all of the assets on the property and not have someone else operate it and own it and not have full responsibility for it. We will have to expand and produce a new cell, which would be 3B within the landfill. The current cell that we're working in, which is 3A, we do not know the actual airspace or life of the cell. Estimation is, you know, sometime maybe a year from now, but we need to be prepared for the close, well, not the closure, but the capacity of that cell being taken up. And reports are being made right now by Waste Options for our review, so we can determine the extent of when cell 3A is going to close and what, you know, the actual breakdown of the engineering costs for the building of cell 3B. We also have a Tioli roll-off or hook lift truck that we've requested, plus a couple containers. That would go part and parcel with the request to have a new Tioli attendant. This person would be able to operate in the Tioli to make us more efficient, not rely on DPW, as well as just kind of overall cleanliness and housekeeping and pickup of the area to not beautify it, but to make it look better. We're trying very hard to make Tioli better, and this is definitely one of the this will help us.
Great, thank you, Chris. Questions for Chris? Peter?
Yeah, hi, Chris, how are you?
Hi, Peter.
Just, can you tell me, when I look at the professional services number, that includes Waste Options and George Aronson, is that the whole thing? Or is there more in there than that?
Yeah, Peter, there is more than that. So we do have monitoring by CDM Smith for the landfill for water. We also have some budget for Weston and Sampson for the review and closure of our phase 1 landfill as well. But we've believed that we're gonna have to get some more engineering done as well. That's not included in the scope of work that these engineers are presently working under for the review of cell 3B for the construction and design, and then actually the closure of 3A as well. So yeah, there is other work to be done.
What percent would you say is waste options against everything else?
The percent of that, they are the lion's share. I don't have a percentage for you, Peter. I wish I did, but I don't know that breakdown.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, if I may, yeah, that line item is like Chris said, the lion's share of the budget. It does include George and CRMC and other consultants. I would estimate 90+% is waste options.
That's what I would think. Okay, thanks, Drew.
So and the same goes for that 800,000. 90% of that increase is based off of the projection of how much waste comes in and the market cost of disposal and recycling. So 800,000 isn't for consulting and engineering services. A portion of that 800 is for additional consulting and engineering services.
Thank you.
Joe?
I was involved with a waste management company in Canada, and we had to put away every year a certain amount of money to make sure that we had actually the cash to restore the site at the end of its useful life. Do we have to do that here?
Yes, Joe, there is a closure cost that every year that Brian has in the available for us, and we send a letter out to the DEP. I believe it's yearly or bi-yearly as far as what this actual closure cost would be if in fact we had an emergency or weren't able to perform. So yes, there is a number.
Do we have to put cash away, Brian, to fund this?
We actually do not. We authorized a borrowing last year for the estimated initial piece. It's what's known as a financial assurance mechanism. And we have a standby letter of credit at a bank backed by our borrowing authorization that was approved at last year's town meeting, which has been provided to DEP.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Chris Glowacki. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Without getting into anything that would, if you can, without getting into anything that would impact a negotiation, as a practical matter, what happens if we don't buy the composter and the transfer station? They pack it up and take it off island?
So Chris, I don't know that answer completely, but the town, Nantucket, needs to daily continue to accept, process, and receive, accept, and process this waste. There is not another option for it on the island. We don't have any other setup as far as getting it off the island, whether it's barges or trucks or, trucks and barges and things like that. So we feel it's just very important to be able to get that done. And the only other option would be to build our own facilities, but that requires site assignment and space available, and we all know that space is not really available on the island, as well as the amount of effort it would take in order to get a site assignment by the Board of Health, as well as any permitting that would be required from Mass DEP.
Hey, Chris, can I add, just because I'm on the committee, the cost to buy this from Waste Options is way lower than it would possibly cost us to rebuild.
Yeah, no, I watched the solid waste meeting, and that was really made clear in that meeting. I was just curious and thinking through how this plays out, how that dynamic works. But fair enough. You guys will figure it out.
Yeah, Chris, I think in short, we've had that conversation. It's a question we don't want to find out the answer to. It's a bridge we don't want to cross.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, Chris, thank you. Chris Lowe, thank you very much. And Drew, thank you very much. Okay, now we're up to our island home. Enterprise Fund. Bob, nice to see you again. And if you're talking, you might be muted.
All right, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you,
All
Bob.
right. What I'll do is go over the four goals briefly, and then I'll go right into the initiatives because they kind of pretty much give you the background on each of the goals. So goal number one, continue to reduce the gap between the subsidies from the town and the revenue gain from our island home. Goal number two, improve the quality measures, which are things like reducing falls and reducing patient incidents, kind of bad outcomes, which will increase our 5-star rating, hopefully to get the 5-star. Goal number three, develop strategies to attract and retain personnel to ensure proper staffing. And goal number four, strengthening and improve our marketing efforts to increase the daily census, Medicare admissions, and then subsequently also increase revenue. So we can go right into the initiatives, and I'll go through some of these in more detail. So in general, we have had a significant increase in revenue year over year. I think we're on track right now to do about 1.1 million increase to over budget for revenue for FY24. Part of those reasons have to do with we've been able to contract with a new therapy team. It's called Preferred Therapy. They're from off island, but they come out in 5 days a week as a requirement for Medicare billing. So we've actually increased our rehab program, and the goal is to continue that to gain more short-term rehab patients, increase census, and ultimately increase revenue. The second initiative, interestingly, in terms of the personnel there, just to give you the big picture, our CNA staff are totally stable. It's all our permanent town employees. We've really been very lucky with that. And so what we want to do is continue that trend. And we're reaching out to Upper Cape Tech on the Cape, Cape Cod Community College. Ultimately, what we would like to do is offer our own CNA certification program right out of our island home. So that would be a long-term goal that I would probably add to that. Number three initiative, we just got approved for a new van. It's beautiful. It's actually in use, and we've been doing a lot of resident outing experiences. They love to drive around town and visit people and visit, and so do the staff, by the way. I've had a lot of beach excursions myself. Number four initiative, continuing to develop plans for the new facility. We've been doing a lot of outreach work that hopefully you've all been hearing about. We just had a series of all-day meetings last Thursday. What's today? This past Thursday, Wednesday and Thursday. We've met with all 3 shifts of staff at our island home. We had an excellent turnout on the day meeting around 1:30. On Thursday, we had about 15 people attend. And so they've been giving input to us with the architects for the new our island home. The fifth initiative, we have actually already contracted with a physician from the Cape, and Dr. Restitui. She's wonderful. She's coming out to help supplement the current primary care doctors who admit there because they don't have time always to see our patients. So they've developed a very close working relationship, and she's available to backstop care at the nursing home and to see people for wellness visits, et cetera. Initiative number 6, we've also have already contracted with a nurse practitioner who specializes in behavioral and psychiatric care. Her name is Nadine Rousseau, and she comes out, I believe, once every 2 weeks or so. And once again, this is all in line with improving our quality. So for example, she can prescribe medications that might be necessary much more quickly. She works with the staff to identify any behavioral issues, and it's been a real benefit to the program overall. The 7th thing, and this is something we've done a lot of work on. We have a new electronic medical record system called Point Click Care, and it is a top of the line best practice system that's used throughout the industry. And what it does is it enables the staff basically to get credit for all the things they were doing previously that we weren't capturing. That's the best way to describe it. So if you're a CNA and you see a behavior change in a patient in the morning, and you might not have documented that under the old system, now we can document it, we can get credit for it. And again, it all ultimately increases reimbursement. The 8th initiative, we've been doing a lot of work with the business office, working also closely with Michelle. Monroe and improving the business office practices as well as billing. Our Medicaid rate, it's somewhere in, I think one of the goals has increased significantly based on a better documentation, actually getting patients approved for Mass Health applications much more timely. We called those Medicaid pendings in the past. So if we have fewer pendings on Medicaid, that means they're getting approved more quickly, and hence the reimbursement is also improving for Medicaid patients. Mass Health, it's the same thing. So those were the initiatives very quickly, and there's some overlap here with the accomplishments. A little bit in the weeds, but the reimbursement system for Medicaid in Massachusetts, we were one of the only states that had this screwy system called MMQs, management minutes, and nobody could quite figure it out.